Good evening and welcome to Speakers Corner UK. Myself and Stop Spamming are back with part 2 of our review/critique of this particular video with our favorite Muslim apologists, Darren Hamza, Sabur, and Imran. And we are continuing off where we left off from part 1 with J. Mike. Good evening, Stops. How are you, sir?
Hi, I'm okay. Yeah, a little bit showing my age here through my back out, but the brain's still working, so it's okay.
Well, that's the claim to fame, right? Stephen Hawkins did a lot more than throw his back out. Look what
That's so true. Yeah,
he accomplished. There's still great things ahead for you. Yeah, there's still great things ahead for you, I'm sure. So we're going to carry on. We're going to go back a little bit here, just a minute or so we can get our bearings. Stops will be running the video, so I'll be saying stops, or stop, or whatever the case is.
Whoa,
yeah, or hang on there, or whatever. I'll just make some sort of noise to say stop the video.
And please remember, we are totally ignoring everything and anything that is happening around us. We're focusing only on the video. So we're not here now to comment on what is happening in France or whatever. This is purely focused on this one video. Okay, just in case you're wondering, no, we're not going to comment on anything today.
Yeah.
You're strawmanning me again. So you're telling me something is...
Did I mention moral realism? Did I mention anti-realism? I'm saying something different.
You're saying it's meaningless when I'm a moral realist. What do you mean?
Can I just say something, guys, just very briefly?
This is
can't let controllers hide.
I just want to summarize this. What happened is that Sabur doesn't understand morality. He doesn't understand the the whole philosophical background of J. Mike. J. Mike has been very patient. He's been trying to explain it to him, but Sabur doesn't understand this. So now what is happening now, Imran is trying to step in because he realizes that Sabur is looking quite desperate at the moment. Hamza is totally out of it. He's packed in, I don't know how long ago. And now Imran is trying to save the day and take it into a different route.
Guys, it's very clear that what seems to be happening to me, I'm just coming, apologies if I'm misunderstanding anybody, that it's clear that we haven't established what everyone else believes about their own positions. So this is why some things are coming up as people, you feel you're being strawmanned or not. Now actually what's happening is in a haphazard way, we're trying to understand where each other stands.
So if you want to ask me, you can ask me, hey Mike, are you a methodological naturalist? And I'll say yes. Right.
So just give me a moment. So I think what's really important is
I need to. I'm sorry about that. There seems to be some sort of a lag or some sort of an offset between audio and video. So I don't know where that suddenly comes from. What has been happening is that Sabur doesn't really understand methodological and philosophical naturalism. That these are two very different things. Where J. Mike has been explaining it to him, Sabur doesn't really get the idea, and this is why he's telling him, well, then you're a philosophical naturalist. And he says, no, I just explained it to you that I am exactly not this. I am the opposite. And Sabur doesn't understand. This is why J. Mike is a little bit upset with this and trying to get Imran to understand why.
If someone asks you a question that they're applying generally, don't take it as a personal thing, because obviously you have to get to know each other before you know what the positions are, okay? So, but it's really important to actually hear each other out, because we're trying to come to an understanding. One of the things that, I came and I just heard a bit before when I was in the background, you mentioned about if you value the scientific method, why don't you use it in your religion or you don't value it within your religion? And I think this is whether you use the term value. Now, Sabur's trying to establish...
No, this is not what happened. Oh boy, this is so funny. J. Mike asked a very straightforward question because Sabur was making this appeal to science, to the scientific method, which he doesn't understand, because you can see by the way that he is talking about it that he doesn't really understand what it's about. So J. Mike asked a very simple question and said, well, if you value the scientific method, how come you don't apply it to the Quran? And that is all he did. This is the only question he asked. And people are now tap dancing around this because they do not have an answer. So what Imran is doing is misrepresenting J. Mike, because he never asked, is there any value in this? He said, if you value truth. This was a different comment. So he says, if you value truth, then you should da-da-da. And Imran is now conflating everything that J. Mike has said without really understanding what the issue is.
I think the biggest thing is, though, that his question is going to go unanswered the entire time, right?
That you what?
His question is going to go unanswered. J. Mike's question is going to go unanswered.
Yeah, they will not be. Rob, you need to speak up a little bit more if you can, because it's incredibly soft. I don't know if anybody... Oh, there are people in the chat. Hello, welcome, beautiful people.
Just let
Good
me know if
evening.
I'm speaking too softly. So give me a 1 in the chat if I'm speaking too softly, and 2 if I'm clearly audible. It might just be on Stop's side, but if I am too soft, then let me know. I don't want to talk too loudly, otherwise I might keep the family awake.
No, now it's okay. If you
Okay,
keep
good.
at this level, this is great, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Something. So I think don't take everything as pejorative or straw manning you. You can clarify when he's finished that, actually I'm not a methodological naturalist. I'm not a methodological naturalist. Just take it as sort of good intent.
No, I get that, but the main problem here is that, like, he's saying I use the word value, but it was in regards to an internal critique of your religion. So to then take it out of it and go, hey,
sure.
You are clearing.
Let me make some claims here, and you tell me what you disagree with, right? I'm not making a claim about you. I'm making a claim about atheists. Okay.
I know, and that's my problem. I don't care about other atheists. They mean literally, we're not in a club together. I don't care about other atheists. Let's talk about either my position or talk about the other position.
That's absolutely fine, but the universe doesn't revolve around you. This is about atheists.
But I'm not speaking for other atheists. I'm speaking for myself.
If you notice, this show we were critiquing atheism in general, and we speak about new atheism. Now, if you have some amazingly nuanced position which doesn't fit any pigeonhole, no problem. We can deal with that.
Okay, just
later on.
stop it there. Yeah, there's nothing amazingly nuanced or pigeonholed about his position. It's relatively straightforward. And if you look at the full papers, a lot of philosophers hold the position that he holds. I don't hold exactly the same position, but that's fine. But new atheism is not the dominant position. It's certainly not the dominant position among whatever this new atheism is, because as we remember from part 1, we went through it, and the Stanford Encyclopedia said there isn't much to it apart from a number of people to whom this label has been attributed, but there's nothing unique and special other than the timing and their universal critique of religion. So this sort of straw man that Sabur has built up that he can attack because he somehow believes that most or all atheists adhere to is just nonsense. And then to saddle J. Mike with that position, or to suggest that his position is a fringe position and that he's critiquing the main line of atheism, just where's the evidence, right? We just go back to where's your evidence. That's the case. What poll, what information do you have to say that most atheists adhere to this, especially atheists that have looked into some of these claims a little bit more?
But I think you can clearly see that Sabur is against the ropes now, and he feels he has to defend himself. So it's quite funny.
But it's the same thing stops as me going and saying, hey, we're going to critique we're going to now critique Shias, and you guys have to answer for them. Right. So,
Exactly.
hey, if you've got this other position, well, you just need to answer for the Shia position. They're going to,
What I'm about to say, I just want you to give your thoughts on it, okay?
Sure.
So I'm about to say something. I just want you to give some thoughts on it. From an atheistic perspective.
Now, this is already wrong, because there is no atheistic perspective. Because an atheist is only the opposite of a theist. A theist believes gods, or all gods and goddesses can exist, and his favorite one does. And the atheist is the opposite, who does not believe gods and goddesses exist. And that's it. So there is no atheistic perspective. So already he's making a fool of himself. He could only appeal to him as a person. And this is something that is very difficult for a theist to understand. I'm always saying a theist cannot get himself or herself to think like an atheist, but the other way around is perfectly possible. And this is quite weird, because Rob has shown millions of times how he can play devil's advocate really, really well by putting himself like into the mindset of a theist, and this works. But the other way around, there seems to be a huge problem. I don't know why.
Morality does not exist. Value does not exist. Meaning does not exist. All of these things are baseless. I'm
No.
making a general statement.
No, not at all. So meaning and value comes to me because of the finite situation, right? So I have no real value beyond, I guess, just the utilization of my car if it lasts forever. To say that because it will end up in a landfill at some point, that it is now meaningless means that's such a nonsensical argument. The fact that my car will end up in a landfill someday gives value because I have to actually have purpose for it to know that, hey, it's not going to last forever. I have to value it. I have to take care of it. I have to make sure I maintain it. That's how you get the value. So the perspective that your book never ends and just goes for eternity, that's meaningless from my perspective. That doesn't have any meaning.
Right.
It's like the Tom and Jerry.
I want to point out something. Hamza is desperate to get rid of this guy. You can see his right hand constantly going for the mouse, going for the kick button. And he's doing this over and over again. I've watched him for a while now, and I can see how his knee-jerk reaction with his right arm is to always go for the mouse and kick him. He's just looking for an excuse to kick out J-Mike because he is scared.
Done here is you've confused intrinsic value and instrumental value.
Okay, stop there a moment. So this is a shifting of the goalposts now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
First it was you don't have this, and when J. Mike said no, but I do, he's now trying to make a distinction after the fact instead of making a distinction before. So there's no confusion here. If you had made that distinction in the beginning, he would have said, fine, I can take instrumental or pragmatic value, that's fine. And if I don't have intrinsic value, that's one of the realities of the position. But again, for you to say you do, you've got a mountain to climb. So you can point it and say, if that's the case, atheists don't have intrinsic value, as in like it's not built into the universe, and we could accept that. But the fact that your God tells you you do is not a rebuttal to that in any case, because you have so much to demonstrate. You have such a burden to shoulder in order to demonstrate that claim is true. So all you're really doing is saying, well, hey, there's something that you don't have an answer to this one thing. That doesn't mean that atheism is false. It just entails something that's perhaps undesirable, or we'd like to have meaning in the universe or whatever. But if it doesn't have it, that's not going to stop us accepting what is likely to be true.
The one thing that, I mean, and the most important thing, I think is what you pointed out in the beginning. What he asked is there such a thing as a car? And J. Mike said, yes, there are cars. And now Subur is saying, yeah, but you didn't differentiate between Formula One and a tractor. And this is where this honest approach comes in. And this is where I'm so shocked that he does this afterwards, after J. Mike has explained it, and now suddenly he's coming up with a differentiation, and that's totally unacceptable.
I have no problem with you having instrumental value, right?
Yeah.
Intrinsically, the universe has no meaning, has no value, has no morality from an atheistic perspective. Don't try and confuse instrumental.
Sure, if it has intrinsic value and meaning, then what is the intrinsic or meaning or value of that meaning? Do you not see the infinite regression that you put yourself in?
Yeah.
What you've done now is you've distracted the question to something else.
No, I'm not. I'm asking.
No, wait. What you tried to do.
I'm not sure if that's the case. I mean, that sort of thing that he's pointing to infinite regress. I have to think about that, to be honest. I'm not sure if that is the case. Maybe I sort of missed that in the purpose. But he's accepting that's the case and going, okay, well, how do you explain this essentially? And he's pointing to what he thinks is an infinite regress of this. Again, maybe I missed something there. Maybe you can explain, because I'm not sure on his position, J. Mike's view now, when he said that, what that actually, whether that's the case. I'd really have to think about it a bit.
Okay, what I heard is that he's going for the universe and saying, okay, that's where the universe comes from. And if you go for the universe, you're going for the infinite regression, because now you're going towards, well, where does that get it? Where does that get it? Where does that get it? Well,
I heard it as like, okay, so there's meaning in the universe, but how is there meaning to that meaning? That's what I was hearing. I mean, you can go back about 10 seconds if you like, but I didn't sort of pick up, maybe, like I said, maybe it bypassed me.
Okay, 4406. If I go here, there we go.
Has no morality from an atheistic perspective. Don't try and confuse instrumental.
Sure, if it has intrinsic value and meaning, then what is the intrinsic or meaning or value of that meaning? Do you not see the infinite?
Exactly. This is where I see it, because he's going for the universe.
Well, I mean, he hasn't said that. Okay, I'm going to put a question mark on that one for me because he didn't
Regression
point to that. But okay.
that you put yourself in.
What you've done now is you've distracted the question to something else.
No, I'm not. I'm asking.
No, wait. What you tried to do is you tried to say,
I'm not trying to do anything.
All right, can I just stop it, Support? Just at this point, if you don't mind.
One second. So you said instrumental, right? So you admit that you have instrumental value or meaning or whatever it is. Intrinsically, the claim that I made, you haven't shot it down, that atheism cannot justify the universe or anything within the universe having intrinsic value.
Sure, there's people that probably maybe if you, I mean, naturalistic pantheism, I guess, is more of a theistic thing. But if you had some version of that where you think like nature is all that, then yeah, you could have some meaning. I don't hold that position. If you're asking me, this is why I don't want to talk about other atheists, because I don't think there is intrinsic purpose in life. That's as easy as, but that's not a problem for me because
okay, stop it there again. Right. So this is just grandstanding, right? There's constant interruption from Sabur here. He thinks he's made some sort of stellar point here, right? And J. Mike's accepted. And I'm at this moment in time, until I get better information, I'm in the same position, right? Yes, it'd be nice to have some sort of meaning, but then you'd have to have some sort of intelligence to give that meaning, right? Prior to the human race, or whatever the case is. But if we don't have it, it's one of those things. You've got to live with it, right? The same as if you don't have free will. There's some undesirable parts to that, or it's unpleasant. But the truth is the truth, and I think to me that's the most important thing. If it's unpleasant or it doesn't sit well with us, but I think the opposite is true for some theists, at least. It gives their life meaning, i.e. it makes them feel good. Whether it's true or not, they get some instrumental value from it, and that's more important to them because they can't demonstrate the intrinsic value.
I know, but support, that's not like, I get it, but it feels like you're just trying to do a gotcha, which I have no problem saying that. The intrinsic meaning means nothing for the value that I have with my family. And stop interrupting me, please.
J. Mike,
it's constant interruption.
It's you trying to hide this idea, which I just exposed you for, which is that you cannot
stop it there again. He didn't expose anything. He was happy to say that's the case. Exactly. So again, this idea of trying to get a gotcha here, because these are trivial points. The guy has already accepted that he doesn't have that. He doesn't believe that. So what points? What exactly are you trying to expose here?
And thank you for using that.
I think he's going for sound bites. I think this is something
correct. And it
wants
sounds
to
good to the audience.
Something.
Yeah, it stops. It also sounds good to the audience. If you say you've exposed and the other person doesn't say, no, you haven't, then it sounds like he's made a massive point. But for any of us who are following, this is a trivial point that he's already accepted. So you haven't actually exposed anything. But the gullible Muslims who are listening to this will, wow, he exposed, he used that word. I didn't quite follow what he said was exposed, but he used that word. The other guy didn't say anything. That's a point in Subur. Because I don't know what's going on, but he said exposed. Cool. That's great. Hey, Subur's our man because he said something that he's exposed the guy.
Yeah, and he used the word intrinsic. I mean, that must mean something, yeah.
So I get that you think it's a gotcha, right? And that's fine. I'll give you that. If you think that's what that is, you can have that. I don't care.
No, you don't give it to me. I took it from you.
There you go. You see?
So that's fine. If you want to play the gotcha game, and I get that's what your thing is. You just want to play the gotcha atheist thing.
He's got this.
You're not actually interested in act.
He's got Subur down to a fine art in a very short amount of time, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't take long.
Discussion.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. I just need to interrupt all of you. Right.
Sure.
We're doing the stream systematically, yeah, J. Mike? And so we started with the science and its history. Yeah, and the way the part that Islam played in its formation, and the idea that science is not opposed to Islam. Islam is not opposed to science.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where, if I were a dog, you could see how the hair at the back of the nape of my neck is going up. This is a very sensitive topic for me because I really went quite deep in this, and this is so ridiculous to make such a statement. Islam is the science killer number one. There is nothing that Islam accepts in science unless there is something that they can make it agree with the Quran with. So the first thing is they always check, is this something that is compatible with the Quran? Then we accept it. If it is not, they reject it immediately. So anything scientific that will go and specify, for example, Big Bang, or will specify evolution, or will specify anything else, they will immediately reject it. And
But it's also
only a
worse.
couple of things.
But it's worse than that as well, Stops, because they each have their own interpretation. So you'll have somebody who will interpret the verse like, rolled out to a carpet to not mean, and like I said, Hamza's done this to me. Well, a carpet goes upstairs, he said to me in Speaker's Corner. I kid you not. I remember it's like certain things are burned into my brain when somebody says something so utterly idiotic. Well, that doesn't mean that the earth is flat. So in his mind, rolled out like a carpet means the fact that it goes upstairs means that, well, that doesn't mean that the earth is flat. So you'll get and that's, that's one crazy interpretation, but you'll get interpretations that will try and cross the boundary with science, so they can go, hey, look, it is. Like, as we've said, right, the more recent English interpretations of the Quran after 1924, when Hubble came out, changed it from vast expanse to expanders or expanding, right? So even some of the less honest interpretations of this have said expanders or expanding, right? So that some of them are trying to split the difference.
Is like totally, utterly wrong. Okay, totally. I mean, there's nothing that you can do. I mean, the claim that Subur made earlier that all the Muslims 1,000 years ago, were so scientific literate and all this and blah, 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 which is the question that prompted J. Mike to ask, well, if this is the case, why is it that you don't apply it to the Quran? Which, okay, Rob has pointed out, it still hasn't been answered, never will. But now Hamza's getting impatient because he doesn't understand what's going on. He just sees that Subur is struggling. Imran doesn't know what's going on, so he thinks he has to now pull the handbrake.
But it's definitely part of it, right? Now, the reason I brought you on, because you were commenting. Now, all I want to establish right now is anything Sabor said with regards to that thing incorrect. You came over Francis.
What thing?
You want to make that point as if
what thing? You got to be more specific. What thing?
So did you not see his introduction and his explanation about science?
No, I came in and I asked for a link. So I don't know. Maybe
you were commenting before the link.
Yeah, maybe I did. I didn't see the full thing. I didn't come in at 4 whenever you started.
So basically,
I wasn't waiting for the stream to start.
Because what it is, you see, I want to move on to the next part of what the stream's about, because the idea was we were going to explain the science and the history behind it. Then we was going to move on to Darwinian evolution and what it is, so we don't straw man it. And then we're going to move on to, as a Muslim now, how should we look at Darwinian evolution as a worldview and how we should reconcile things.
Darwinian evolution to him is a worldview. I don't know. Maybe we have different understandings of worldview. For me, a worldview is how I see the world from my particular standpoint. So if I get up in the morning and I need to decide, okay, which leg is going to leave bed first, it depends on my worldview. And a Muslim has to decide which leg goes first because it's prescribed. If he wants to enter the toilet, it's prescribed which leg to go first. I don't have that. So I have varying worldviews depending on what I am looking at. And Darwinian evolution cannot possibly be a worldview unless you want it to mean that, there is no Adam and Eve. If that is what you consider a worldview, I'm sorry, that is not my definition of a worldview. This is just one small aspect of some detail somewhere in history or something, but nothing else. So it's not a worldview. So I don't know how they can say, or how you can say now, that Darwinian evolution is a worldview. It's mind-boggling.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I'll tweak slightly a little bit of what you said before, but I agree. Darwinian evolution is not a worldview, and even some Christians fully accept Darwinian evolution. So that's one small part. It's like a piece in the puzzle, but a worldview is an all-encompassing, high-level view of how you see the world. So certain things are implicit in atheism, right? So there's no teleological mind, and there will be certain implicit things that flow from that. But a worldview, again, you'd have to ask people, because there's as you say, there's many pieces to a puzzle with a worldview. And so, but I think it's either they take a reductionist view on that, or they take a segment out of that and then claim that that's a worldview. So either way, and that's what didn't happen with J. Mike. Okay, what sort of atheists are you? Because they're coming from a view that, you know, within Islam, or certainly within their Sunni sect, that there's all these Sunnis that agree, and even within their sect, the Sunnis don't even agree, right? So, but they have the same view. So, they're because of their brain is coming with that sort of programming, they think that the opposite must be true as well. And so, there's a lot to be asked of an atheist if you want to have an intellectually honest conversation and you want to challenge their version. If you're going to challenge some other version, a different atheistic worldview in inverted commas, well, then that person obviously is going to say, well, I don't apply to that. So you're making a critique that I'm not going to defend, just like they wouldn't defend Shi'ism.
But anyway, to generalize this and claim that this is a worldview is in my eyes is totally ridiculous.
Sure. Well,
and then we're going to invite people on.
Well,
the only reason I invited you on now, because apparently in the comments you're saying I'm not around for long. Yeah?
Yep.
So I'm going to jump you off now.
Well, let me ask you guys a question real fast, because
I want to stay on point.
Well, yes, but if you're going to go into that, and because you're going to get atheists to come on, and that's fine. I'm actually a computational biology major, so given the hypothesis of natural selection, how do you explain vestigial structures in an animal such as Osteonis mexicanus that has remnants of eyes, or say the pelvic bone in a snake? If it's not common ancestry, what is your hypothesis?
All right, so like I said to you,
because that's what I'm interested in as a computational biologist. That's why I want to.
Okay, obviously.
I was pushing the wrong button.
Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that there will be no response to that question.
Yeah,
right? They don't have a response. In fact, even much smarter, and that's not difficult, I guess, but a lot smarter, knowledgeable Christians who are, the Discovery Institute and whatever, that sort of study science and try and, make it compatible with Christianity. They don't have answers to these sort of things. And in fact, even in Why Evolution is True by Jerry Coyne, he says the same thing, right? There's certain things that even the intelligent design people just don't go with. They don't have an answer for. And this is one of those sort of things. How do you explain this, right? What they attempt to do is say, hey, well, it had a different function in the past, right? But that doesn't actually answer the question. And so, once you understand these topics, then this is a very good question, but I guarantee it'll go unanswered.
But I want everybody to notice, this is the way to go. Make your statement and immediately follow it up with a question.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question. It's a good question.
No, it's an amazing question because this is the underdetermination. This is the problem of underdetermination.
Mike,
hold on, but guys, I know, but I barely got to say anything. So if you can't come up with a hypothesis, then you can't then go into Darwinian evolution and say, well, this is wrong and that's wrong. What's your hypothesis, and how can we falsify it?
One second. Yeah. So you've asked your question. You've made clear you're a computational biologist about 5 times. So we got that. Don't worry about that. So what you're basically asking is, what's the alternative?
I'm asking you what your hypothesis is. Because clearly you don't think evolution is true. So then, what is your hypothesis for vestigial structures? How do you account for?
Mike, you've got to let Sabo speak now, man.
Look,
you made your big state. You made a big claim about the height.
I think it's funny how he can go on forever, but I can't.
Yeah, I think this is obviously a double standard, right?
Yeah.
He's asked the question again because there is no answer coming back here, and in fact, there's just sort of vacuous words coming out of mouths at the moment, and so he's asking the question again. These guys constantly interrupt, and when he interrupts them for just speaking gobbledygook and not actually responding to the question, suddenly he's always interrupting. I mean, this is just. But again, I guess this is how some of these guys roll. They don't see the double standard, and they've got such a bias that they are completely blinded, not only to the double standards they employ, but also their own ignorance and their own introspection, like reflecting, go, hang on a moment, maybe there's something here for me to learn. And even when they claim they don't know something, they still jump in. When I say they, in particular, Hamza, jump in with both feet to try and, answer something that you have no clue about.
And here I can make a suggestion, which I found works very well, is to ask in advance, how many seconds do I have before you will interrupt? Or how many words can I say before you interrupt? This somehow seems to make an impression. So that worked, yeah.
Mike, how about this? You ask your question a bit more clearly again, and then
I mean, he asked it twice, crystal clear. I mean, is there anybody in the comments here listening with us here who might be chatting to each other and stuff who didn't hear what the question was? This tells me this is the problem, right? They're not listening to have a conversation. They're listening for some word that they can jump on to try and get a gotcha. This is not, as long as we understand this is not about an intellectual conversation. This is to try and say things that'll appeal to their gullible sheep-like audience so they can go away patting themselves on the back that their boys did a great job when in fact they said nothing of substantial value.
Let me just repeat this. What is your alternative hypothesis? Okay, I mean, you can't get it more clear. You can't get it more succinct. You can't get it more. This is the best that you could do. And they say, can you make it more clear, please?
and I'll answer the question.
Sure.
And I want to talk to you. I'll give you the next 10 minutes. No
Sure.
problem.
Do you know what a vestigial structure is or homologous structures are? Are you familiar with them?
Is that your question?
Yeah, but I'm asking him. Are you familiar? So that way, I'm not talking past him. Are you familiar with homologous or vestigial structures?
No.
Of course. I mean,
Just ask the question.
That was a question.
That's it then.
No,
Of
it's
course.
a clarifying question before I ask him a question because I'm not going to talk about vestigial structures if he doesn't know what it is.
Mike, don't worry. Support knows his stuff.
Okay, cool. So we know vestigial structures.
Mike, I want you to understand something, yeah? Don't assume like I don't know what I'm talking about. Like this is stuff that kids know, vestigial structures. Why would you think I don't know?
Well, so more, maybe kids know about it, but you don't. You don't understand vestigial structures. This is the problem. This is why people are asking you, because you are totally, totally clueless and ignorant. That's why people need to ask you. And now I'm sure J. Mike is going to ask you, and you're going to make a fool of yourself because you don't know what these are.
Know that.
I didn't learn about that until I was getting my degree. So maybe you're just smarter than me.
That's poor education. I mean, vestigial structures is something kids know.
Really? We'll have to look into the.
Obvious.
I'd be willing to bet 90% of the people in the chat probably don't know, and that's not to their fault because it's not something that they get into. But regardless,
Stop it here. Okay, I think J might made a mistake here, right? He's in a discussion here, and he kind of recognized it a bit early on, but then he's sort of gone back in a sense. He's in a discussion to have an intellectually honest conversation. His interlocutors are not, right? Yeah. And so him bringing up the question, do you know what it is, was a mistake, because now we're going around the houses. I'm not sure if he's going to, I can't remember if he actually gets to ask the question again, but because he asked that clarifying question, in a sense, he muddied the waters for himself. Any other interlocutor would have immediately says, yes, I know what that is, or, maybe you can explain it to me. But these guys have gone around their houses, and now it's going to, in a sense, backfire, because I don't think he'll be able to get to ask the question clearly again and to get a clear answer. But let's see.
What is your hypothesis for accounting for vestigial structures if it's not a common ancestry?
So firstly, we're not putting forward a hypothesis.
Stop. Did you see that? Right, these guys interrupt incessantly. That pause, like for me, was a gulf. It was a chasm there, right?
Yeah.
It was just quiet. It was only for 2 seconds, but it was that 2 seconds for me lasted like ages because they're constantly interrupting here. But when he asked them a question back, what do you get? Complete silence, and the response: we're not putting forward a hypothesis. If this doesn't tell you,
yes.
If this doesn't, this is like chalk on a board, right? This is so transparent. The level of intellectual or lack thereof discussion in this sort of chat. Of course, they have a position, but because he knows his stuff, do you think Sobua is going to put forward the position in any way that can be critiqued on a scientific basis? You've got no chance.
To actually explain vestigial organs. Vestigial organs can fit within a Darwinian framework, but it can also fit within a Lamarckian framework. And the existence of vestigial organs is not evidence of natural selection.
I mean, is this guy fucking dumb? He asked a straightforward questions. What is your alternative hypothesis? He didn't ask you what it is not. He didn't ask you to exclude things.
Being the main driving force of evolution.
That's a common ancestry.
One sec, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to make sure you got it right. It's common ancestry. I didn't say natural selection.
You did say natural selection.
I said common. No, I did not. I said common ancestry. I haven't even said the word natural selection.
You said it the first time you asked a question about vestigial organs. This time you skipped it.
Should we go back now?
Yeah, go and have a quick look there. I don't think he did either, because that we would have picked up that,
Okay,
that
50,
question as well.
30.
I mean, naturalistic pantheism, I guess, is more of a theistic thing. Please.
J Mike, it's not me. It's you.
You can
That's
also
what
go
you're
at
saying is you just want to play the
1.25
gotcha
speed. That
atheist
should
thing.
also still
And
be
you're
good
not
stuff.
actually interested in actually going through the discussion.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. I just need to interrupt all of you. Right.
Sure.
We're doing this stream systematically, yeah, J Mike?
Yeah,
You were commenting before.
Well,
The only reason I invited you on,
You're a computational biologist about 5 times, so we got that. Don't worry about that. So what you're basically asking is, what's the alternative?
remnants of eyes, or say a.
the only reason I invited you on now, because apparently in the comments you're saying I'm not around for long. Yeah?
Yep.
So I'm going to jump you off now.
Well, let me ask you guys a question real fast, because
No,
I'm
because
barely,
I want to stay on point.
well, yes, but if you're going to go into that, and because you're going to get atheists to come on, and that's fine. I'm actually a computational biology major, so given the hypothesis of natural selection, how do you explain vestigial structures?
He said natural selection.
They did there, yeah. Okay.
Into that, and because you're going
Let's
to get
go back-
atheists to
go
come on,
forward
and that's
then.
fine. I'm actually a computational biology major, so given the hypothesis of natural selection, how do you explain vestigial structures?
Yep.
Yeah, he didn't say common descent. He said natural
Where
selection.
was I? Sorry, I forgot.
50-33 or something, I think you said.
Okay, wait. So you're basically saying, how is it possible to have vestigial organs and common ancestry is false? Now, when it comes to vestigial
That's not his
organs,
question.
vestigial organs does not mean universal common ancestry is true. All it simply means is there may be organs that were being used, and when they were not being used over a period of time, or they were no longer conferred an adaptive advantage, that they got discarded. So you have fish who, for example, you have
That's
this
not the
fish who
answer.
live in darkness, and over time they actually lost the ability to see
Stop there a moment.
because they didn't.
He's just.
Yeah, but he's explaining vestigial organs to a guy that already knows that, and actually asked him
Yeah.
the question if he knows what it is. So again, this is like explaining something that he already knows to use up airtime. It's not an answer to say this, and to say that it doesn't demonstrate universal common ancestry. Well, I mean, if it demonstrates common ancestry, which is presumably J. Mike's approach, even though he said natural selection, the question is, what is your understanding of this? And don't tell us about whether other views that you don't hold or don't accept anyway, they might explain it, or it might be explained under their views. What is your view that you claim explains it? That's the point, right? And you made that point yourself, Stop. So pointing out other views that might also be explained isn't an answer to the question. He's asking you for your view.
There's no adaptive advantage to actually having eyes, and the energy cost of maintaining the eyes was not really worth it. So you have these vestigial organs in nature. Now, previously on my channel, Darwinian Delusions, I've spoken about vestigial organs and why vestigial organs is not evidence for Darwinism. Vestigial organs can fit.
That's not the question. He is not saying this is evidence. He is not saying anything like that. He's asking for an alternative hypothesis. It's that easy.
Into multiple other frameworks, and additionally, it doesn't mean universal common ancestry is true. It simply means that you have organs which over time you no longer use, and they still remain
He's
within the
repeating
body.
himself now.
So
Yeah.
I don't see how the evidence of vestigial organs proves common
It
ancestry or Darwinian evolution, because if that was the case, then vestigial organs have been known way before Darwin. We're talking about hundreds of years before Darwin.
Sure, and so that's what matters about the collective case.
One second, I'll let you complete your point, right? So on your point, they keep banging on about that you're a computational biologist or whatever, right? I just want you to understand something. Fair enough, you've studied, you're a computational biologist, but
Who's
there's
repeating
something I
himself
want you to
now?
understand. You can't just use the authority that you have in the field and make it look like, right, we know what we're doing, we've got this sorted out.
No, come on. He's
Oh,
asking you a fucking question. What
The
is wrong
irony.
with you?
The irony of that, right? When he appeals to guys that he claims are atheists that say X and Y about atheism. His appeal to authority, and when he's put under pressure about the main claims that these guys make against Dawkins, for example, we actually find out that they agree with Dawkins. What they disagree on is Dawkins making a mistake about philosophical and natural and methodological naturalism. But when somebody else says, hey, I know about this and this is my position, well, you can't use that as your argument. It's not that he was using that, but if that's the case, then you can't use any of the experts that you claim either. So you're shooting yourself in the foot by making this. This is just, but again, this is all red herring stuff, right? Because we're not going to get an answer. And he said it right in the beginning. I'm not making a claim about my hypothesis.
In 2016,
because obviously whatever his hypothesis is would sound ridiculous and very likely be shot down very quickly. So he's very careful not to make a hypothesis like intelligent design or anything else, which actually doesn't give any predictive value or explain how and why these things are there anyway.
London at the Royal Society, there was a meeting of biologists, and these are eminent biologists from across the...
Excuse me, is he now appealing to authority?
Exactly, and this is just a monologue.
And it was about whether Darwin was actually right
but
in
stop
his
there for a
hypothesis.
moment.
So yeah.
But the other reason that this goes on, in my view, is that this is now to establish some credibility, right? Because the other guy's got his credibility, and Subu's even granted that he's credible, and then tried to pull the rug that you can't appeal to your credibility, which is not what he was doing anyway. But now this is to try and save face and to get some credibility back myself, to say, hey, look, I've done all of this. I've looked into all of this sort of stuff. I'm on the same level, if not better than you. But this is, again, not answering the question. So this is all waffle in an attempt to look good to the gullible audience. So we just got to realize what is going on here.
Just creating impression, that's it.
Had those people who were promoting this idea that we can't stay with the modern synthesis, we need something new, and other people who are saying, no, we can actually keep it. So you have biologists discussing these core aspects of Darwinism, some saying we should discard it, some saying we can get rid of it. Now, you can try and come in and you can try and hoodwink people with, oh, I'm doing a PhD and I've got this and that going on.
I didn't say I was getting a PhD.
Okay, whatever, computational biologist, whatever you're doing, right? But when we look at the biological community from a macro perspective, we see disputes, we see clear areas of disagreement, and we see people trying to push forward alternatives. So you can't just keep repeating I'm a computational biologist and therefore we're not going to challenge. We're not going to challenge what you're basically saying.
As far as I'm aware, and Stops, you can correct me or anybody in the chat is I'm welcome to as well. Natural selection as the driving mechanism is the most widely held view. So yes, there's going to be people who are going to challenge that. The rest of us aren't going to take that seriously if and until it becomes the mainstream view, because it has more evidence and it has a better predictive capability. Until then, they can have their discussions behind closed doors about this to the public, and I think we're justified as we're going to accept the consensus view because it has the most consensus of evidence in its favor at this moment in time. If we were to change, then we can accept that. But all of this is just, as we say, this is all red herring stuff.
This is totally wrong. Who the fuck cares? Even if it is totally wrong. He asked him, what is your alternative? He has already granted him all that. He says, what is your alternative? He isn't making his point. He is not defending himself. He just wants to hear if there is anything forthcoming and in the form of an alternative. And that's
but you see what's happening here, Stops, as well, is if he can attempt to shoot down in the eyes of the gullible listeners the main alternatives, if he can do that in their minds, he doesn't even have to utter what his alternative is. In their mind, it's just, well, the science is not conclusive, and therefore we are somehow justified in believing what we believe about this, even if we don't have an answer to vestigial organs. The fact that there's such wide dispute, everything's up in the air. This is the inference that is being drawn here. Well, that means that we can be safe in believing what the Quran says. That's the point here. We don't even have to utter an alternative, as long as we talk enough about the goings on about the mainstream views. Then you can just leave it in the air, and the other people go, great, there's all this dispute. Whew, I can still believe in the Quran.
Because whatever you're saying, if you're going to say, this is my view, I can bring out someone else's view and say, this person's more qualified than you, and this is their view.
Well, I mean, this is just how the basis of biology works. And then when you take the collective of...
That's a pity. I was hoping he was just going to sit there quietly and saying, are you going to answer my question? But he's engaging, and this is the problem. Now he's going to wander off. Shit.
punctuated equilibria or phyletic gradualism and all these different concepts that you take, every time we add these together, the theories that other people present start to dwindle down very quickly because they can't account for all these things. And so this goes back to the point that Hamza was making, right? Would I believe the doctor based off of him being in the doctors? Well, this is like saying, would I believe evolution off of vestigial structures? Or would I believe in the common ancestry? Well, I could, right? But it could still be underdetermined, which is the whole point of what I was trying to bring up, right? And then now when we add these things like I said earlier, punctuated equilibria or phyletic gradualism, morphology, all these types of things, if you can still support your hypothesis, please send it my way.
Okay, so in a sense, he's made a good point, but he's gone quite. It's quite nuanced for the viewers. The viewers won't really pick this up. What he's really saying is that, hey, all of these things are best explained by natural selection, rather than some of the competing ideas. And had he said it sort of more like that, but I think he's made a good point in that all of these things start to dwindle down the other ideas that people have come up with, right? And whatever's left, the more of those you bring in, the less ideas explain all of these things, which is a good point. And therefore, all these other, quote, competing ideas, they're not to be taken seriously because they either don't explain or don't have an explanation at all for some of these things.
Yeah. I just have to laugh at the blank expression on Hamza's face.
I would love to see the work on that, because if you could flip biology up on its head, that would be awesome. I would basically be wasting my life.
Mike, can I just ask you quickly? Can I just ask this question quickly, Sabor? Sorry.
I couldn't hear you, Hamza. I'm sorry.
Can I just ask this question quickly? So, sorry. It's on the same topic.
Sure.
So, can I ask you then why you believe this vestigial structure demonstrates universal common ancestry?
I don't alone. It's all of this, the evidence, sufficient evidence that points to common ancestry.
What about it convinces you it demonstrates universal ancestry?
Sure. What purpose would Osteanus mexicanus have with remnants of eyes?
No.
Okay, this is a pointless question, because whatever his answer is, Hamza is not going to understand it, or he's going to, as he's just doing now, he's just going to argue the point in his ignorance. So again, this is not easy, and it's easy from the armchair point of view, but once you recognize who your interlocutors are, in fact, not giving an answer to somebody like Hamza is the best thing to do here, because it's just going to go way over his head anyway. So answering this question and trying to give him a science lesson about vestigial structures is going to be completely pointless in this environment.
Exactly. Stick with your question. Are you going to answer my question, yes or no? It's fine. If you can't answer my question, it's fine. It's okay. All right. I just want to know whether you have an answer. If you don't have an answer, cool. Let's go next topic. But stick with it.
We're saying about accepting it exists.
Yeah. So the hypothesis there would be that there's potentially a common ancestor. It no longer needs the same thing. And
this is exactly what you pointed out, because now Hamza is going to look at the individual words and he will not understand what J. Mike is saying, that there is a potential blah blah blah. He only hears the word potential, and he's
going to interrupt incessantly as well. So we're going to get a straight.
Yeah, but
the same thing here is universal.
I'm sorry?
You will talk about a universal common ancestor, isn't it?
I never said universal. You guys keep adding words that I never said. I just said
okay,
common ancestor.
Wait, one second. J. Mike, you've done this a few times now. I just want to clarify something.
If I said universal that time, I apologize. But when you said natural selection and all those other things, I never said that, because you also strawmanned me and said I was a philosophical naturalist, which I'm not. So,
so he's on
you've done that multiple times.
He didn't call you a philosophical naturalist. He just spoke about atheists.
I did. I said most
I was about to just drop.
No, most atheists.
I was literally just about to say this is the most disingenuous thing I've been a part of.
Look, J. Mike, I want you to do something right now. Define for me Darwinian evolution and whether you support it or not.
Define.
And this is what Sabor is very good at, and I have to give him credit here. He is very good at taking it and turning it around so that the other guy has to answer questions. He is taking control. He has not been able to answer any single question that J. Mike has asked, but immediately he turns it around. He waffles a bit and then comes with a question, putting the other person, because he was against the ropes. The guy, the referee, already started counting, but then he manages to turn it around. And
it's like
you.
using your analogy, it's like he's down on the ground, for example. He says, "Look over there, ref. Look at that person. That somebody in my opponent's corner is cheating over there." So the ref looks around. He's able to roll around, or his corner comes and gives him like a little sniff of something that wakes him up again, and then he's able to jump up on his feet using your analogy.
And that's what he's good at, and I have to give him credit here. This is what he does. I mean, he doesn't answer. He has no clue what he's talking about, but he manages to pull it off just on tactics.
We don't really typically use that term like when we're talking about Darwinian evolution. It just is like kind of a something that religious people hold on to. But if you want me to,
okay, so let's clarify that first.
Sure.
I'm making
Stop
the claim Darwin.
You see what, and you're absolutely right. Now it's going to go into some trivialities, something that is not relevant to anything, to try and score a few cheap points and say, hey, some academics use this, right? Especially in the US, as far as I can tell, they don't use it there very often. Some people might use it here, certainly not amongst the group that he does and so forth. Maybe at a very high academic level they do this, but this is a few cheap points to skate around and not have to answer, as you point out, some of the relevant questions. What is your hypothesis for this, right? So now we go off on a tangent. And as we, hopefully for people who are watching, you'll more of the tactics will become known to you, and you'll immediately start to spot these sort of things and you go, here we go off on a tangent of irrelevant things to score a few cheap points so that his gullible audience will think that he said something substantial when they couldn't tell the difference if you gave them a manual.
In evolution.
Why are we? Can I real quick though? Why are we moving on? Because it seems so like unorganized. Because when you're saying these, because Hamza asked me a question, right? And so I'm hoping to answer it. And then we've moved on to another question.
Because what he did is he pointed out that you were saying common ancestry. We were trying to clarify is universal common ancestry. What I want to do is I want to go back to the definitions. From the definitions, I want to build up. So the first thing that you said right now is Darwinism is not an academic term. It's something religious people use.
No, I didn't say it wasn't an academic term. I just call it natural selection. You want to talk about natural selection? You want to talk about evolution? We could talk about it by.
It doesn't matter what you think.
By the theory of natural.
It doesn't matter what you think. I'm asking you here right now. Didn't you just say Darwinism is something that religious people use?
Yes.
Yes, generally more so than biologists.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you another question.
Saying that Darwinism isn't used by biology. It's not the term not used. I'm just saying you guys call it Darwin. It's just called evolution by natural selection. This is all you got to call it.
Is Darwinism an academic term?
Trivial points.
Okay, thank you. So let's just throw that little.
Actually, no, it's not. It is not an academic term, because nobody will go and say that it's an ism. The usage of Darwin is the same as asking, do you call
you hate the isms, but
This is crazy calling it an academic term. Yes, it is being used, but it's not an academic term that people use. It's like Daimlerism. You don't use it.
Out the bag, that whole idea that
yes, but what is the theory? What's the theory?
By religious people. Okay, well, 1 second. So I'm happy we sorted that mess out. So Darwinism is an academic term. I'm glad you don't have to go down that road. Okay, now define for me Darwinism.
I would define natural. We're going over evolution by the theory of natural selection. I don't care how we're defining Darwinism. Why do I have to define? Why do I, as a biology major, have to give you definitions? I'm not understanding.
Said Darwinian evolution is something religious people use. It doesn't really exist.
Yes, but you also diverged after you had asked me a question when I wanted to get into embryology, right, and talk about the vestigial structures there, and then you just moved on to let's define Darwinism.
Because you're using terms and you're not defining terms, and we're across.
I asked you. I literally go, what is vestigial structure, right? And then he goes, I know what it is. You don't have to define this. Now you guys are reverting back to defining words. Like which one is it?
No. He explained what vestigial structure was. He explained it doesn't demonstrate a universal common ancestry.
What we're going to do with all your questions, but what I noticed is you are using words in a very slippery way. So I'm trying to get all the definitions, and then we're going to deal with vestigial organs, common ancestry, all of that. So now I'm asking you, you have admitted Darwinism is not just something religious people use. It's an academic term. Please define it for me.
Yeah, and I did 3 times. It's natural selection. It's the theory of evolution by natural selection. That's all it is. I've said that 3 times now.
And what does it say about natural selection? What is natural selection?
A driven force. What do you want?
Okay.
What do you want
so
from
stop
me?
here. Stop here.
Can't keep saying
This now is to try and again score some cheap points here, right? To show, well, he doesn't really know what he's talking about, because hey, if he doesn't say this word or that word, which is exactly what he attempted to do with me in Speaker's Corner, right? Then you don't know what you're talking about. Or you're talking complete nonsense or whatever. So we just got to be very wary of the tactics here, and be able to basically do a subur on subur, right? And just move on. So hey, I've given it to you. Let's move on. Or something like that. The sort of tactics that he does here, because this is trivial stuff and it's not getting anywhere. And he's, I think, quite rightly getting frustrated here.
I'm not here to give you a biology.
No.
I'm here to talk about religion and your hypotheses.
Mike.
We're not here to talk about
You're
Islam.
never going to get
We're here to
there.
talk about
Yes,
Darwinian evolution. The stream is called Deciphering Darwinian Delusion. If you don't believe in Darwinism, you're on the wrong stream.
So wait, hold on 1 second. Can you please define it?
Define what?
Because all you're saying is natural selection, but what natural selection, the idea that the fittest survive, this was known before Darwin, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to define what is natural selection from a Darwinian perspective.
Okay, yes, differences in phenotype over survival and reproduction. Can we move on? It's change inheritable traits or characteristics in a population over generations. What do you want? This is so pointless. This is a waste of time.
Absolutely pointless.
It's not pointless.
It is
pointless.
I can see you getting a bit uncomfortable. Just
no. So what I'm getting mad at is that Hamza asked me a question and I can't get back to that question. That's why I'm mad.
Don't worry, we're
We'll
gonna
come to it.
We are worried. We are
Yeah,
extremely concerned.
but remember how I
Stop
said I
it
was
again.
limited on time? I would like to answer the question and
Just
just be
stop it there.
coherent in some ways and not.
Yeah, we are extremely concerned. Every time, don't worry, we'll get back to it. We never do. You're becoming a champion at trying to get trivial points that aren't relevant to the thing. And once people know this, and if we ever get to have a discussion at some point, we'll come
Just
in
like jump
armed
around.
to
It
know
just
this
makes no-
stuff.
Why
You're just
can't I
looking to-
change speed here?
It's under the little. There should be on the bottom.
You
there.
agree with that? Okay.
Yes,
little,
it acts upon phenotypes. Yes.
Yeah, there should be a little cog, a wheel.
I know the cog is not here.
Okay, well then you don't have it,
I
I
can
guess.
only do picture in picture, but I can't do the cog. Shit.
Yeah, you're not
Okay.
using. You're not using
Now,
Chrome, are you?
natural selection,
This is
when
Chrome,
it
yeah.
wants to make these biological changes, it explains the origin of body plans, and it works on random mutations. You agree with this? All of this so far?
Yes.
Okay. Now, is that a view which is being challenged by evolutionary biologists in the world today?
Yes. Okay. Next point.
Anyone's going to challenge any view. It's how you falsify
Exactly.
things.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you
the point
aware
didn't
of
really land.
That's what some people I know are trying to do. It's see if falsify certain theories, right?
Can you give me the different ways that biologists are challenging
Are you
this
fucking
model of
mad?
evolution?
This is like asking, do you know the Titanic? Yes. When did it sink? Well, on the 29th of February, 1929. How many passengers? 2,785. Give me their names.
Yeah. This is trivial bullshit, really. And and hopefully J Mike won't fall for it for much longer.
Who is?
Biologists, because you claim to be a biologist, right?
Yeah, some are like 2% of people
Look,
or 2% of the field or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
J Mike, firstly, where on earth did you get this 2% from?
It's just a hyperbolic statement, but it's very
No,
low.
it's not.
It's very low. Yeah, it's very low.
What makes you okay? Firstly, if you're going to make statements, you have to be precise, because I'm going to pick you up on that.
Stop.
Right?
Stop.
Okay, so
Stop.
I'm gonna
Stop. Okay. Let's see if this clown. Now I'm getting frustrated. This clown plays consistently, right? They make claims all the time. And again, I'm going to repeat it in this part as well. When we deal with these people, we need to keep asking them, what's your evidence for that, right? Because they'll go along and at some point when he's got nothing else to say, he'll harp onto something that J. Mike has said about 2%. That's probably his anecdotal view on it. And it's probably pretty close, I would imagine. He's in the field, etc.
Yes.
But now they're going to go and ask for this question. But when they make generalist ridiculous claims, we're not asking them, where's your peer review? And when you do, we've just got to pay attention to the tactics they use, right? And just use the same ones, because the moment you do and they don't like it, go, hang on a moment, but you did that. So this is it's like a learning process for all of us to deal with these people, because they're so intellectually dishonest, that you have to find the techniques that work with these people, because being intellectually honest with them just doesn't get you anywhere, right? They dance around this thing. They're like slippery slugs.
This is what I was trying to explain last time, where sometimes I seem to be thinking, but I'm thinking, if I say this, is this going to come back and bite me later on? So I go through 5 different answers before I answer to make sure that I don't say anything that will come back later. This is exactly the step that J. Mike does not do, because he's not used to it. And this is the point, because if somebody says to him, yeah, but hang on, here you're wrong, he will say, oh, okay, actually you're right. I never thought of that. But here you can't do that, because this is being extracted from you, and then it's being lifted up like a trophy. If he says, well, I'm a biology major and I have to concede a point here, this is not seen as an intellectual, honest learning process, but as a defeat. And this is the problem that we have here. Look at the face of Subur suddenly. He was down and out, and now he's like, I'm back on top of the world because I've got somebody that I can push all the way, and I'm no longer going to answer any questions. Look at Hamza, he's all smiling. Well, Imran is just sitting there. I don't know, is he real, or has he replaced himself with a puppet? I don't know. But this is so amazing, because I'm watching the facial structures of these 3 guys all the time. So it's quite amazing.
Get that one off. Like, you've got no basis for saying 2%. Anyway, can you tell me the different ways they're
Yes, he does have a basis for saying 2%. It is called an estimate, because there are other things that can lead to truthful statements. You can also use your intuition and things. They might be off by a percentage point, but I think he's pretty good. It's a pretty good estimate.
challenging it, please? Because you claim to be a computational biologist, so I want to make sure that you understand what you're doing.
Oh,
Stop it there.
Mr. Teacher wants to make sure that our major wants to know what he's doing, so that the Professor Subur could go and check him.
Yeah, I mean, that's just clownish in and of itself. But separately from that, computational biology isn't necessarily going to go into what all the other supposed people that are challenging this. Even he says other people are challenging. If you had to ask him what specifically they're doing, he's not necessarily going to know what some of the other people are doing to challenge it in a particular field, and that's what he's doing. So he's not necessarily aware of all the other, competing, in inverted commas, ideas out there. So this is all irrelevant, right? All of this is irrelevant. So you've got to cut it off much earlier. But again, if you're somebody like J. Mike, who's probably used to having more intellectually honest conversations, then you might end up going down this route. But he's, I think, dealing with it to some degree. He's recognizing that it's bollocks, but he's allowing Subur still to run with us.
Yeah, it's too much leeway. And the thing is, a computational biologist is somebody who builds models. Okay, he's not somebody who studies the flesh and the composition of skin or
the philosophy or whatever it is, right?
So it's very different.
Why do I have to explain to you how people are changing something? I don't accept change or
trying
to falsify something. If
you're the one that came onto this live stream and about 10 times said, I'm a computational biologist, so I want to ask you
what he should have done. Stop here for a second. What he should have done at this immediate moment, it just comes to me, right? Turn the question around. Do you know what a computational biologist is? Right, and obviously Subur wouldn't know, and then he would explain, this is my field and this is what I do. This is the extent of my expertise, right? And cut it off right there. That would have been a good way to bring this to a very swift conclusion.
Is Imran waiting for some sort of an input from somebody?
Different ways evolutionary biologists are challenging Darwinian evolution. Can you?
The thing is, this is Subur's thing, okay? He always brings out, but this insert name here said this and this, which is usually wrong. But anyway, this is his thing. He always comes up with, but he's challenging this, but they're all challenging different things in different areas. And this is a very, very small number of people who are actually able to do that.
That's the point.
He is making it sound like it's a lot, because in different areas, different people are challenging different details, okay? And this is what he wants to hear now. This is what he wants to bring out. I'm
Yep.
the master of all these challenges, and that's it. And you don't have an answer, and therefore I win.
But the other thing
Please
we can do
listen.
in future, hang on a moment, stops. But the other thing we can do in future is a reductio. Hey, did you know that there are people challenging the legitimacy of the Quran and the Quran? Are you aware of that? There's these challenges going on. That must mean that the Quran is not what you guys thought it was. I'll just play the same game with you. That
Exactly.
and do the same thing,
Turn
right?
it
Because
around,
all he's
yeah.
trying to do is undermine the idea that evolution is a quote fact in inverted commas. We can play the same game and undermine the idea that the Quran is factually, quote unquote, the direct dictated word of Muhammad, because some people are questioning the Quran. So we can play the same game.
Yeah, but that's
And
why
it's an
we're not
intellectually
allowed on Hamza's
dishonest
game,
game,
you see.
necessarily to say that that's the majority view in the Islamic world.
I mean, no, because I'm not challenging Darwin evolution, so that's not my. I'm not falsifying evolution in any sense. And you've called me a biologist like 4 times, and I've specifically said I'm a computational biology major, right? So I'm still in my study. I'm not a biologist.
Fine,
right?
your major.
So stop straw manning me again. And
Fine.
Just like
fine.
how you called me a philosophical naturalist, yeah, I'm not that. So let's be consistent.
Well, what I want to find out from you is you came on this stream and you basically repeated that you're doing a biology major, which I'd like to.
Do you know what computational biology is?
There we go.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Look, all I want to.
Oops.
No
Oops.
answer. No answer. What did you think is going to happen? Do you think he's actually going to stop and give you an intellectually honest answer? But the other thing, right, is to insert in here why you came on, because he's referred to you came on. Yes, I came on and I've asked you these questions that at no point have I remotely even got close to an answer. In fact, you've said you don't have an answer. Now, to the audience listening, your top men here don't have an answer to vestigial organs or something else. Don't you find that curious?
Do from you is this. I want you to tell me what are the different ways evolutionary biologists are challenging Darwinian evolution.
None of that matters to me. I don't.
No.
Great answer. And he could repeat his question again. Hey, do you know what the fact that you keep asking me this, do you know what a computational biologist is? Now I'm going to wait for you to answer the question. I've just said it's irrelevant. It's not something that I have expertise in. Do you know what a computational biologist is? Because you seem to be asking us questions with the thought that I have expertise in all the other fields. So can you tell me what a computational biologist is, please? Or stop asking this question now.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Just let Imran clarify a second, so we'll continue. Don't worry. Just because Imran does his little calm clarification. I like that. It brings everyone out of the bushes.
So J-Mike, what we're trying to do actually is just have a conversation, and it seems to be that there's defensiveness going on. Now I'm no pejorativeness here. I'm being straightforward with you. We really want to understand, and sometimes it might be that we're asking a question that you feel is patronizing. It's not intended. Just help the conversation flow by if it's a.
Who is he speaking for? He's obviously not speaking for Sabur, or maybe he thinks he is. I mean, has he been listening at all here? But this is, of course, the buddy thing, right? You and I might disagree and so forth. These guys will almost never say anything that will disagree or say, hey, you weren't doing that, buddy, whatever the case is, right? And then make it as a we, as if, everybody's doing that. Of course, Sabur is not doing that. If you're listening and paying attention, Imran, then of course that's not the case. And maybe your intention might be that if we're very charitable, but don't make that the case for your two buddies, because that's not their intention.
It's not sort of suggesting that you don't know what you're talking about.
But here's the problem. I came on the stream and I asked you guys how you're using this method in order to prove your claims to be true. And you weaseled out of that and started asking me about biology.
Great observation.
No.
Because weaseled out. You haven't even attempted. So yeah, you have weaseled out, but it's actually worse than that. You didn't even attempt it, and the response from your top man supposedly is that we're not even putting forward our hypothesis. I wonder why.
And I even brought up how are you using this vestigial structures to come up with your hypothesis, right? And for some reason you want to ask me how other people are falsifying biology. That's the most evasive thing you
come on with a giant.
Wonderful.
Grateful.
It is. That is the most evasive. He's got the right word for this. Evasive attitude that you people have. I've asked you two very, very clear, very straightforward questions. You have not even attempted to answer them, and all you're doing is you're evading. That is perfect. I wish he would continue like this and just hammer these 2 points home, and that is all he has to do. Stick with these 2 points, and they're lost.
Straw man.
Strawman.
Do you even know what a straw man
know
is?
what a strawman is.
Bing.
What straw man? Tell
We've
me.
not said this proves Islam is true.
Huh?
What we're talking about now. We haven't said this proves Islam true.
No.
That is
Speak
a
for
strawman.
yourself. Speak for yourself, buddy. Your buddies don't think that. So don't say we. And the fact that you can't, his view is he can't prove Islam's true. But then he goes, well, hey, I've got reasons. Like he's so confused about this proof, reasons, belief thing. I mean, it's like somebody's heard these words, or kind of heard people talking about, but can't actually put these things together. And then he's all confused about these things, and then makes statements like, we can't show this. We're not claiming this proves. But aren't you supposed to be showing that science and Islam are compatible? Is that not the claim ultimately? Evolution being one part of the scientific method or one particular topic, is that not the idea? You're trying to bridge the gap and say, hey, science and Islam, because he said this in the past, are compatible, i.e. we don't have a problem with science. That's the words he's used elsewhere. Maybe not in the stream, but he said it before. We don't have a problem with science. Well, if you don't have a problem, then science should be able to explain the things in your Quran. And if it doesn't, where's the problem? Either with science or your Quran. Now, we know what your view is. It's always going to be with science because your Quran can't be wrong. Even though you can't show it to be true, you think it can't be wrong.
And if I were to put a title on the picture of Sabur, I'd say, how can I get this guy?
Oh, I asked you if you think that this methodology is successful, why isn't it being applied to your religion? That's what I asked you.
Which is a good question.
And everybody has avoided it the whole entire time for an hour.
Mike, we wasn't even talking about this. We were talking about the history of science. And you came on, threw Francis Bacon out, and they said, I could go into it, but I'm going to ask this. Well, no, because your Francis Bacon claim will address what we've been speaking about.
No.
No, it won't. What are you talking about?
It does not do this. He just showed that your claim that it was Ibn Haytham is wrong. That it was actually Francis Bacon who came up with this. What Haytham did is just mention something about testing. What Sabur somehow blew up into scientific method, which it didn't do. So Mike corrected you, and that is it.
But
and
also,
then you ask the question and you can't answer it.
But also, they open the door to this. What does he think that Sabur has been trying to do now? Is to try and pin Mike on evolution claims, and now he's suddenly saying, "Well, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the history of science." But this whole last 10 or 15 minutes has been on them talking about evolution, vestigial structures, etc. Now suddenly he's decided then that's not what the stream is about. After about a 15-minute conversation.
True.
Yes, and then did I not go?
No, but
I'll grant it for you so that we can get into how. Because you don't want to show how your religion is true through the methodology that you're purporting is valuable.
Exactly.
And that's disingenuous.
Oh, look. Oh, yes, is that.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful response, right? That's a summary of the entire position. They don't want to do that. That's brilliant.
And look at the reaction.
Guys,
No.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Yeah, go on
so Mike, I just want to very briefly, because you're right, that was a question you asked.
Yes, and by the way, there's 3 of you and 1 of me. So you think it's unfair for me to talk up, but I got 3 of you to try to overtalk me. So just keep that in mind as well, right? So
they're not over talking you. I'm over.
Just did.
So Mike, I've tried just to not talk actually, if I'm very honest with you, because you were having a conversation. And actually, we were trying to let you have a conversation with Sabur, but it was getting very almost like defensive. And they're just trying to bring some calm and actually some discussion so we can really move forward and learn from each other.
Actually,
that's
stop
what we're
it for a
trying
moment.
to do.
We've just repeated. Why do you think that was happening? Maybe if you stopped and listened, actually, Imran, to what your boy was doing, you might realize why J. Mike might have been a bit defensive. But of course, don't mention that, or you've got zero awareness of this. But I'll point it out for you, because he was trying to make trivial points against J. Mike that weren't relevant, that J. Mike wasn't interested in, was prepared to grant certain things, and he wanted to keep beating a dead horse because he wants to get trivial points under his belt for the gullible audience so that they think that he's said something substantial. I've now pointed it out like a child would. So I don't want to hear you in future going as if there's no reason for J. Mike to be defensive.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is how I just interact. So it's
no worries. Okay, so
how I am.
let's interact in a way that we'll benefit from each other. So the question assumes that we're going to use the method which is scientific, which we're talking about in terms of the development of science. The question assumes that can be used to verify something that is metaphysical. Now, no one has claimed that. No one's made this claim. So I don't believe that I can prove God using science. It's the wrong tool. It's like me using a hairdryer underwater. It doesn't make sense to do that.
So then why are we purporting that this is a valuable method if we're not using it? What is the method that you're using? Because that's what's important.
No, but that's a different question.
Absolutely. No, that's the point, really. So what we were trying to do before we got onto actually the main part of the stream was to lay out the foundations of the history of science in a more general way, in not ignoring, because what in the West, when I was being taught in schools and universities, we jumped from the Greeks to the Renaissance. Everything else is called the Dark Ages, and we don't really learn about the contributions that other non-European civilizations have made to the scientific knowledge. And knowledge does not belong to any specific group of people. We all are standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're just trying to actually just mention, yes, these things have been used and developed also by Muslims as well. And actually, we believe the motivation behind this was specifically because of the things within the Quran that sort of urge us to look at nature and think about nature, etc. So we were just getting to that point.
This is where you've got to, well, you and I would jump in here, obviously. J. Mike might not be familiar with it. Point to the Quranic verses that say that. Let's go to the Quran. You made a specific claim that the Quran contributed or inferred, or people could infer from the Quran that they should be doing these things. Just show us the verse so we can go through it. Let's read it together and see if your understanding is as good as you say, because you say it in passing as if it's an agreed upon thing that's the case. When of course there was that split, wasn't there? And many of the Muslims disagreed with this. So who says that you are correct when they are saying, no, you shouldn't be doing this? They're reading the same book as you, number one. And number two, his point was, show us why this is important. Why do you think it's valuable? You've been through this whole thing in the beginning to tell us about this, to tell us about your view that you think these Muslims have had, quote, something valuable, because if it wasn't of some value, you wouldn't be talking about it. So why is it valuable to you guys? If it's not to show your God, then why is it valuable?
Now, no one has claimed, and I don't believe any of you can ask them to verify that we use the scientific method as our way to learn what truth is, because this is the claim about religion and God, is we believe in truth. And science, like I agree with you completely, doesn't do that. It just makes models of how the world works and getting closer and closer every time. So I think we sort of crossed wires there from the beginning. And really what we're trying to now do is understand each other. So have your conversation with Sabor. Try and sort of be generous to each other in terms of, even if you think a question is patronizing, don't take it in that way.
Make sure you point that at Sabor while you're saying this, Imran. Make sure you point it at Sabor.
So we can move forward.
And also, don't be afraid. Mike, don't be afraid to say I don't know.
I know.
Says the man who says I don't know and jumps in with both feet when he doesn't know something and tries to argue the point. The hypocrisy is certainly not lost on me.
And I have.
A man who says I don't know. When you say that and actually keep quiet and learn something and then come back and you've learned something, then you'll be able to speak. At the moment, that is such a hypocritical thing to say.
I've told you that.
No, you don't. You try to justify you don't know. If you don't know something, it's not a problem.
No. So
Imran, I just want you to add to your point.
I'm wondering when I can.
I want to speak to J. Mike one-to-one. But what's very important for me is if he's going to speak about biological evolution, I want to get the definitions right, because without getting the definitions right, we're going to be talking past each other.
Then how come you didn't want me to get the vestigial structures definition right with you? But then now you
come to that.
It's just so like inconsistent.
No, don't worry, J. Mike, we're going to get to that.
We are concerned because we're never going to get to any of that stuff.
Just 1 second.
Yes, I know. We could. So, like I said at the beginning, I'm limited on time. We could get in all to biology and all that kind of stuff. But I came here specifically to ask you if you value that method, and now you're saying that you're not using it. What method are you using to get to your God?
That's another question.
Who said
Yes.
wait, 1 second, Hamza.
Well
Just say if you don't
done.
know, right? Just say, guys, I don't know how we get to our God, right? Don't be scared to say I don't know. Don't be scared. I mean, hang on a moment.
Might
Wasn't
keep
that just
making
Hamza
these
saying that?
assertions which we've never said. Who said we're not using it?
Imran
Imran
just said
did.
it, buddy. He just said to you it's
Just
the
said-
wrong tool to use. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
He's going to repeat
Imran
it
just
himself.
said it, yeah.
Did you, Imran? Did you not just say that you didn't use it?
No.
Did you
Who-
not, Imran? Come on,
Who said we
come
don't
on,
use-
back me up, dude. This is like the 10th time people
We
keep
said we
saying
don't
one
use science to prove the metaphysical.
Yeah, that's so. Let me just clarify. So the
that
That's
not
what
scientific
your
metaphysical?
method.
worldview's based on, buddy.
So that's the scientific method is a valuable tool to learn about nature. We agree 100%. I'm a methodological naturalist.
Who
Look at
cares what
watch the
your
face
claim
of
is?
Sabur.
I'm
Your
not
Quran
a,
tells you
a
everything already.
Christian.
Why do you need science?
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't believe that that's the only way to know about the truth. Now, the methodological naturalism means I apply science and the scientific model in my day-to-day life all the time. That's not how I arrive at the belief in God, and this is the distinction that we were making. So it's a valuable method to use, and it definitely should be used, and we should learn it, and we appreciate it, and we value it. But in terms of being someone who believes in the Creator, that's not the tool that we use. So I think there might be a conflation or
No,
misunderstanding.
I know.
No, there's no
I completely understand
conflations.
that.
Just
You've
stop
laid
it
that
there.
out. Now I'm asking,
Just stop it there. J. Mike's point was if you don't use this to prove your God or to show that Islam is true, why are you valuable? You're telling him, well, I use it in my day-to-day life. Well, he could even challenge that, but let's just for the moment accept that you use it in your day-to-day life. Well, I mean, the Quran should be your guide and your book, right? Because hey, it's a complete book that tells you all these things. But even if you didn't, that's irrelevant. His point was specifically that you're not using it for the purpose of finding out about that Islam is true, and you're making the point that you should value it. If it's just to value natural things, well, that's a trivial point and actually a debatable point from your point of view anyway. If you're not going to use science to show that, in fact, your worldview is true, why make such a big deal of it?
what is that tool? Because if that is a valuable tool to get you the metaphysical, then screw what we're using for the science, because that is clearly a way more demonstrable way of getting to truth. If it's getting you outside of this, right? So I would really like to know.
Science isn't getting you all truth.
Hey, Mike, that's the
I'm
first.
not. Yes, science isn't getting us all truth. I've agreed to that. I said a priori knowledge is possible. Conceptual knowledge is possible. But that's what math, logic. That's what all that.
Mike. Let's calm things down. Have the one-on-one with support. Because the reason.
Yeah, but Hamza, if you keep on interrupting, how the hell are you supposed to do that?
The reason why we went from the vestigial thing back to where we are now is because terms were being used that kind of didn't really apply. So what Sabor wants to do now is let's go back to the basics.
Terms were being used that didn't apply? What terms were being used that didn't apply?
These guys are either deaf or they just don't care. J. Mike came on for some specific reasons. If you're not going to answer his question, say, hey, we're not going to answer that at all, or we don't know. Don't be afraid to say that, Hamza, by your own words. And then J. Mike can leave the conversation. But to go back to the definitions and stuff which you've moved on from is, again, a trivial thing. It's red herring and it's wasting time. Right? But again, this is not about truth for them.
Because, listen, everyone's here to learn. People in the comments are here to learn. People who watch the videos
you're not.
to
You're
learn.
here to make
I'm
assertions.
here to learn, okay? So
what have you learned?
Basically, we want to understand the terms being used and whether you understand the terms being used. Because if you're using a term that's not being used correctly, then everything coming after is going to be messed up, right?
Yeah, agreed.
So, and if you don't know something, you don't need to say, I don't know, but why do I need to know it? Just say, I don't know. And then the question is, do I need to know it?
Hey, when we want your advice, Hamza, we'll give it to you, okay? When we want
so
your
let's start
advice, we'll
again,
give it to you.
Yeah, but this is crazy.
Look, I've been itching away at this for a while, so let me just.
This too many voices.
It's going to be linked to the vestigial organ thing as well. So when I initially asked J. Mike, because J. Mike was asking me questions like, "Do you know what vestigial organs are?" Or basic things, you know. And when I asked him, "Okay, who challenges it and how do they challenge it?" He didn't know, so I'm just going to go over some ways that it's challenged.
Who the hell cares? What is this now?
happened.
To try and big up something you've read on the internet or something you've read elsewhere? What, again, to try and get credibility? This is all it is. J. Mike doesn't care, and neither do the rest of us. If and when these become the mainstream view, because they explain everything better than anything else, then we're going to take an interest. I'm not interested, neither is Stops, neither is anybody else. Your only reason for doing this is to try and show your gullible audience that, hey, there's some discussion around this, i.e. so that when somebody comes to them, they can say, hey, there's discussion. It's not as clear-cut as you think. Well, we could use that for any other scientific or philosophical point as well. So thanks for bringing forward trivialities.
But the thing is, what he just said is not what happened. This is the whole point. Sabur is now trying to move the goalpost yet again by saying, well, you did not know when you were talking about vestigial organs who is criticizing this. That was not the point at all. So I don't know why he's trying to do that when anybody who was listening to this will immediately understand, excuse me, that was wrong. So I don't know why he's doing that.
So rather than simply adapting to the environment passively, which is what classical Darwinism actually teaches, now some theorists are really pushing the idea of niche construction. Actually, we adapt the environment to our needs, right? So we expand out the conditions of existence. Apart from that, we have alternatives. So we have evolution by natural genetic engineering put forward by people like James Shapiro, neo-mutationism put forward by Masatoshi Nai. We have also a neo-Lamarckian evolution being put forward by Ivo Jabranka and all the rest. So the reason why I'm highlighting all of these is because under all of these vestigial organs can fit.
This is
right? They can actually fit. So bringing up vestigial organs as if on its own it was going to be some sort of decisive argument.
No, I specifically clarified that.
Complete. Vestigial organs do not in any way, shape, or form go on to prove the two twin theses of Darwinism, which is universal common ancestry and natural selection being the main driving force of evolution. None of these can actually be substantiated using vestigial organs.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's what I'm telling you. I agree because that's what I had said at the beginning.
This is the last thing I'm going to say. Because if that was the case, most biologists would be redundant and your argument would stand.
Yes, and what I told you was that I used the vestigial structures as one thing, right? I tried to get into homology and I tried to get into embryology, right? The tails within, embryonic development within humans or mammals. I tried to get into that, but what I started with was one thing, which was vestigial structures, right? And I agreed. I said there's still a problem of underdetermination because you could come up with multiple conclusions. So we're both on the same page there. So there's nothing to argue there. The thing is when you this is why if you rewind the tape, when I said, when you start looking into phyletic gradualism, you start looking into punctuated equilibria, you start looking into, you're saying something about adaptation, but the problem with what you're saying there is I would want to see what your adaptive traits are doing in that, because in the developmental pattern of an organism, it enhances the probability of it surviving and reproducing, right? And so that's part of the process. So I don't see with what you're saying it has anything to do with what's not already included within evolution in that sense. But then the cumulative case, I don't see how you are getting,
Again, you're completely mixing up terms here. Yeah, you're talking about evolution and Darwinism, and you keep mixing them up. When you mention evolution, are you referring simply to, I don't know, change in gene frequencies in a population, or are you referring to natural selection being the main driving?
I've said natural selection each time.
If you said it, then you're referring to Darwinism. Can you use the term Darwinism, please, to be precise?
Sure. I just, like I said, if you rewind it, I said I just call natural selection. This is. I mean, if you want me to call it Darwinism, that's fine. I just don't know why you want me to say your specific word.
Because that's the academic term.
Sure.
Which you tried to deny. You tried to say it's a religious term, but that's the actual academic term.
He said most people.
Well, so it does come off religious when you want me to kind of say it like in some dogmatic.
Let's just clarify what actually happened. He said religious people mostly use that term. He doesn't use it. Most people in the US don't use it. If there are some people or some academics do use it on occasions, that's not what the general public uses. So he wants to get this term in because then he can also go to Darwin himself and point out some other red herring things as to muddy the waters even further. That's why he's pressing this point instead of just saying evolution through natural selection, which is what J. Mike says. And I don't think J. Mike should concede that point. Say, hey, this is what we say over here. If you want to use that term and it's analogous, you use that. I'm going to use this, because the moment he grants that, there's further things that he's going to have to grant, or the further things that Sabur is going to try and get him to grant down the way that he's going to be uncomfortable doing. So the main thing I think is with Sabur, don't grant anything unless you absolutely know it or you're entirely comfortable with whatever it is. Otherwise, it's just a ploy to get you to do something so that later on there's something else that you have to concede to.
And if you go into Darwinism, if you use that word, then you are automatically excluding anything that Darwin did not address. And we're talking about DNA, we're talking about genetics, we're talking about a huge field here that is not covered in the original Darwin, what was it? The theory of origins? No, origin of species. Thank you. I don't know why I had a block now. The origin of species does not cover any of that. So if you are limiting yourself to Darwin, then there is a lot of things missing in evolution. So I would never go and agree to use Darwin in a word, because it's too restrictive. So
that makes sense, right? So
no, Mike, that's not fair. Mike, that's not fair. You said the only people who mainly use Darwinian evolution are religious people. Your words.
Yeah, and right, and
isn't that
no,
that is
people
true.
Who use Darwinism, not Darwinian evolution. He specifically said Darwinism is what religious people normally use.
And I agree. And I agreed it is an academic term. I'm not denying that. I never denied that. So I'm just saying. It's just adorable to me. Is all I'm trying to say. It's adorable.
Right, but so I understand, because I'm learning. Is Darwinism Darwinian evolution?
Darwinism is a process of natural selection.
But it's not Darwinian evolution.
It's the theory of a natural selection.
But isn't that Darwinian evolution?
It is.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it is not, because that now goes into natural selection. What are you talking about?
Yes, it's this Darwinism. Why are we wasting time on this?
No, because here's the thing, Mike. We're not wasting time, because what you tried to do, you tried to fob it off on religious people as if it doesn't mean anything.
We are way past that right now. Like, that was so long
ago.
No,
but I like to underline things, because
yes, I know, but you wanted a one-on-one with me and Sabor. Now you're back in the conversation. You guys can't stay consistent.
No. The point here is this.
I'm really embarrassing.
Yeah. And so the point here is this. You said something, and now you've taken it back, and we're going to highlight that. It's not a gotcha moment.
Yeah, that's
don't lie.
You even Hamza, did you not ask me point blank? Or I'm sorry, Sabor. One of you asked me point blank, is it an academic term? And I said yes. Right, Sabor? Wasn't that you? Yeah. I have no problem with that. But it is funny how it. What I tried to say, Hamza, I'm just trying to say it's adorable how you guys use Darwinism. That's all I'm trying to say. It's adorable.
All right. Hamza, let's now we've dealt with that. Now we've dealt with
let's move on. Because I don't have as much time. So
I just how much time do you have, Mike?
I can give you like 30 more minutes, maybe.
30 minutes. Yeah. All right. I don't know if we'll give you 30 minutes, but let's see.
That's fine.
Now ask another question that you want to ask. Whatever you want to ask.
He's asked you questions. The most important questions.
So how are you guys coming to truth? If you're so focused on how I come to truth in my methodology, which I don't claim Cartesian certainty. If evolution got flipped upside down, it's cool. Then whatever the truth is what I care about. It seems that you guys are very hard pressed on your beliefs, right? Like, you want them to be true, or they think they're true, or you genuinely think they're true. However it is your degrees of certainty are, I don't know, and I don't want to strawman that. But how are you coming to the truth of that? Did you just simply read it, or like I don't want to strawman you? So how did you come to the truth of this belief?
So firstly, I would say epistemically, the belief that we begin off with is that certainty is possible, right?
Okay, now the claim is
the word epistemically in there. Why is it that these guys love the word epistemic so much, even if it does not make any sense? Because certainty is not part of epistemology. So I don't know why he sees.
Well, some people think it is, though. Stops. Some people think, I think very, very few, as far as I can tell, think that it is. But somebody like him is making claims now that it is possible to have certainty. And again, the question to ask him is, do you mean epistemic certainty? And if so, please demonstrate the method by which it's possible.
Okay, or that way around. Okay.
You can come to certainty. Now, from my understanding, again, I don't want to make a straw man, But from what you just said, you don't believe you can come to that type of certainty.
You
Stop
talking
it
about
there
like
again.
Cartesian certainty?
Stop it again. You see the tactic, you've highlighted it again. There it was again. And Mike is now going to answer the question. No, don't answer the question. He made a claim, tagged a question on the end so that you can't then go in and you just ignore that question. You go back to and say, hey, you said that certainty. Do you mean epistemic certainty? And if you do, how do you get to that? What's the method by which you think that's even possible? And now you go into
they
that.
don't define it. They're always saying, yeah, we define everything, but excuse me, no, you didn't.
Just ignore the question on there. There's a line of question. He said, ask us some questions, right? Or ask me a question, right? But what he means is ask a question, then I'll tag a question. No. I'm familiar with this because there's other people like Darth Dawkins and other people who do this all the time. So I'm very finely tuned against this sort of stuff, right? Where they're not going to allow a deep questioning of their views because, they don't have a lot there. It's all sitting on quicksand. So J. Mike here, unfortunately, is now going to answer the question instead of ignoring the question and going back to the claim. Like, just have that claim. As soon as you hear the claim in your head, go with that claim and get them to answer it. Especially, that's a massive claim. Oh, well, they think certainty is possible. What certainty and how do you demonstrate that it's even possible?
Certainty is absolutely possible. Science never transcends the assumption of fallibility. Science remains fully in the realm of guarantee and never transgress into... Huh? If it leaves
but he's not talking about science.
It leaves the state and realm of science entirely.
What are you reading now?
In the chat, Gordon Fiala is saying that certainty is absolutely possible. And I don't know, from a scientific point of view, I don't know the term certainty.
Well, if that's a question, right? What do you mean epistemic certainty, i.e. that we can know such things that we cannot be mistaken about? And if so, what is the method by which you can attain that sort of epistemic certainty? That's the question I'll ask these guys, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we can. I'm under the impression that's likely not possible for me to, given the current state of, technology, things like that.
How do you do it, Sabua?
Okay, so if that's the case, why are you on this live stream?
What a stupid question. What an incredibly
what does that
stupid... Stop it
Like,
there.
if you're not certain about anything...
No, you got
Stop it
degrees
there.
of certainty.
Stop it there. What an incredibly stupid... what a ridiculous question. Why are you on the live stream? Because you can't have certainty. It's reliability that we're going towards and not certainty. And if your original claim was that it's possible, demonstrate that it's possible. You see again, he's able to slip like a slippery slug through this thing of not having to justify it and then turn it around with a question. You've got to be very careful with these guys' tactics, right? They're not here to have an intellectually honest conversation. But also one question at a rudimentary high level, and they're not allow you to go, and you've just got to be laser focused and avoid any of this dodging and evasiveness. And if you stepped away, there stops, you might have potentially popped off to the loo or something like that. So I think that's the main thing. You've got to. There you're back. Okay. No worries.
Right. I'm never going to right. So we could say this is Descartes' demon. We could say I'm in a brain in a vat. We could say I'm in a matrix. We could do all that kind of stuff, right? But, and I'm okay with accepting that's a possibility. Like I'm not, but I'm as certain as I possibly can be that that's not the case. The same way I'm about as certain that I'm having a conversation with you.
So that belief in probabilistic certainty, are you certain that that's the right worldview?
What a ridiculously stupid
I'm not certain that's the right route. If I was certain, then I would. That would undermine me saying I don't have Cartesian.
What a ridiculously stupid question. And then all you have to do is turn it around and say, I'm not certain. Are you certain of anything? How do you demonstrate it, right? Just turn the tables back again. But it's such a ridiculously stupid question.
Right.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, all of the sort of contentions that you have or the arguments that you try and make fundamentally could be absolutely baseless.
Yes.
Same
Sure,
for
they
you.
totally
Welcome
could be, but
to
I
a
have actual
trivially true
processes
point.
of being able to verify these
Hey,
things.
I'm the champion. Stop it again.
Live as if they are not the case. But if you could show me a way that they're not, that's fine.
Oh,
But the
stop it
arbitrary
again.
of like you could be.
Stop
So like
if
what
you're
we've
there.
done now.
Thank you very much for making a trivially true point. So are you. Congratulations. Everybody's in the same boat. Well done. Pat yourself on the back.
Of
But
me
J.
asking you
Mike
how
needs
you
to challenge him on this now.
determine things. You just tried to flip it on me, and that's fine. I'll answer these things. But if you
No, because what I'm trying to get
He
to
did
is
flip
I
it.
want to find.
He's
J. Mike
like
recognized
I
it,
always
but
said,
you
it's the good boy syndrome. You know, you
got to
talk
recognize it
answer,
in the
and that's what
beginning and
you
not
do.
allow it. Yeah. He recognized
Yeah.
it, but he answered a few questions. And then once you're off answering a few questions, you're off down that lane and he's in control. The way to get
Yeah,
back
it's
into control
difficult.
is to answer the question quickly, then tag the question on and go back to it. Hey, you made this claim. Now I want you to justify this by a line of questioning.
Yeah.
Out from you, fundamentally, do you believe in coherentism or do you believe in foundationalism? Bringing your
Completely
epistemology
irrelevant.
down, what is your basis?
Who cares?
Where
It's
do you-
irrelevant.
probably some form of foundationalism, cogito ergo
Okay.
sum, or something like that. Probably, but
I don't mean to be rude here, but that contradicts what you said earlier.
huh?
If you're foundationalist,
No, I said probably some form of foundationalism. I didn't say I'm a foundationalist. I said probably some form of foundationalism, like cogito, like Rene Descartes, cogito ergo sum, right? So like I can base off my experience. That's basically where I'm at. If you're going to go down to the foundation, like where I get law of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, things like that, right? I'm coming from cogito ergo sum, or I think therefore I am, or dubito ergo cogito ergo sum. I doubt therefore I think therefore I am.
okay, so you're essentially coming from a worldview of skepticism.
I would say
does that have to do
fallibilism
with
and
the
skepticism potentially, but yeah, maybe, sure.
Fallibilism is a type of skepticism.
Yeah, so but more specifically, I can have knowledge and be wrong. It's perfectly fine. It's called being intellectually honest.
No, you've just labeled it intellectually honest, and that's just
No,
one worldview,
philosophers
by the
accept
way.
that.
Well, if
as
I
well.
decided it was automatically true,
I
how
mean,
would I ever know?
look,
How would I
look,
ever know it's not
look,
true,
look,
right?
look,
If I
look,
just
look,
decided
look.
it's absolutely true, how could I
Stop
ever
there
allow
again,
myself for
Stops.
falsification if it's not true?
J. Mike, we're talking about some very basics of philosophy here.
No, I know.
You don't seem to
Your
understand them, though,
epistemology
Subur.
is
So when you
what
talk
we
No,
about
he
would call
basics, just
belief
stop it there.
first epistemology.
Yeah, you don't seem to understand the basis of this. At least I've had a little look into this. I'm not no expert, but you don't have an understanding of this. Yes, you can have knowledge without being certain. Most philosophers agree that. And if you're going to claim that you have knowledge with certainty, please demonstrate how you can do that, and especially about your God. And we'll see how you sink in a hole. But you'd never allow that line of questioning. If I did that, you'd sink immediately. You'd be buried in no time. But that's only if you're intellectually honest. You try and dodge. But I'd be laser focused and wouldn't allow that anyway. But he's clueless here on this part.
Right? And do you know what belief first epistemology is?
I've never heard that phrase, no.
Okay.
But I can assume what it means.
What is he?
The thing is,
opening
Mike,
now?
look, you know,
How come Hamza is not jumping in and said, look, the topic of the stream is this and this, and it's not this? Why is he doing this if J. Mike
because
does
it's
but
his
if
buddy,
Sabur
right?
goes off into the desert, he doesn't say a word.
Well, two reasons. Stops at least two reasons. He's no clue what Subur is saying. And number two, it's his buddy, right? So he's going to let him run with whatever he does until J. Mike says something that he doesn't like. Then he's going to try and rein it back in.
no, you come onto this live stream and then you like there's some very basic things here.
Well, let's not get into the meta. Let's focus about the
No,
argument.
I want to because it's kind of like
No, I don't though. Let's focus about
Next thing he's going to say, yeah, but you're so nervous and you're shaking and your eyes are bloodshot.
Yeah.
And,
All this bollocks, right? But
the
remember what's
argument.
happened
Meta
here.
has nothing to do with this.
you're trying to talk
We've
about
gone
very
all the way down
complicated.
here. We've gone all the way down here. He made a claim at the beginning that needed to be challenged straight away, that it's possible to have epistemic, or it's possible to be certain. What certainty and how do you get there? That's where we get. And now you see what happens when you allow it to drift, right? The more questions you ask that take you off track, the more you forget about the original point. And now you go down these trivial points here. And all we're getting now is some grandstanding, the claims that he doesn't understand when the guy himself doesn't understand these topics.
Things, and I'm asking you simple questions like belief first epistemology or knowledge first epistemology or these types of things, and you just don't know what these are, but yet at the same time you're trying to come forward as an intellectual and with I believe in fallibilism, but you don't even know.
Because I
that's
haven't
not a
heard the
summary,
term
right?
belief first, that makes me now incoherent with philosophy. I don't understand your argument. That's just a really bad argument.
You don't understand your actual position, and you try to say that your position is just being intellectually honest, which is
Yes.
one. Are you saying
Subar, steelman my position.
Are you saying belief first
Stop there.
epistemologists are the only intellectually honest
Stop.
ones, and
Stop.
knowledge?
oh, sorry, I thought he was talking.
No, it was me. Sorry. It was me. he asked a great thing, right? This is grandstanding. This is for the gullible audience that'll make it sound as if he knows what he's talking about when he doesn't, trying to point out and to be uncharitable and disingenuous with J.
Yeah.
Mike. But now
Explain
the
it. Yeah, just go and
key
explain
point
it.
that
Yeah.
he said here was, right, steel man my position. And
Which means
what's the
explain it.
chances that Sabur will remotely steel man his chances? I'll bet my house it doesn't happen. Let's see.
Why don't you, since you know, Subor, steel man my position. I'll tell you if you're right.
I don't need to, because
There
you
we
just
go. Did you hear the pause? Did you hear the pause? It rings out like, to me, it's like a red flag that's just in my ears. That pause there, what the hell do I say next? How do I get out of having to steel man his position? And all he does is the straightforward, dishonest, I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
showed that you don't even have a position.
But he doesn't say I
Doesn't
don't know.
he doesn't have a
No,
position? Are you
steel man.
Well,
If my position, I don't have a position, then steel man it is I don't have a position. But steel man my position.
Look, J. Mike. Why
Listen,
wouldn't
man,
Let
this is
me
going
dodge
on
this as
now.
much as
Listen,
possible.
You don't want.
sorry,
So you don't want to steel man my position?
No, what I want to say, Mike, is this. I'm going to mute you a second now because you interrupt a lot. Right. So basically, what it is,
Irony.
right? This
The
stream
inconsistent
is about the
hypocrite.
history of science and its formation and Darwinian evolution and such. Now,
This stream is about the history of science.
I'll be
Now,
back in
if
1 sec,
I
stops.
go back like 25 seconds or so, I heard Subur talking about not the history of science, but something, what was it? Intimate belief? No, what was it? Something about belief. That has nothing to do with the history of science. Now, how come you didn't jump in there?
you're asking us why we believe Islam is true. Now, I'm going to go into Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, how this stream is not about presenting Islam as the truth. Okay? It's not about that. So for me to demonstrate to you, because we've said science isn't going to do that job, we say we use other methods, and obviously we're going to look at the Quran, but we're not going to start going into that now here. This stream is not for that purpose. This stream is specifically...
Well, that's the reason I got on the stream, was to ask you guys why you believe.
Just 1 second, Mike. I told you to interrupt. So what it is, we're going through systematically. So you helped us, you brought us into the Darwinian evolution flex of...
Excuse me, this is the topic, the title of this stream. I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
the stream. But now you're trying to get us to go into why we believe the Quran is the word of Allah, why we believe Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, is a messenger of God, and it's a completely
That's not
different
what he
stream.
said, no.
And we're not here to do that in this stream. Okay, there's a specific nature to this stream. So you haven't brought any arguments against the initial presentation.
He did not bring any arguments. He asked you 2 questions, you fool. And you have not answered any of those 2 questions. These are basic questions which are totally on topic, which are totally part of the stream, and you just simply fail to answer them. That's all there is to it.
I'm back.
And now you're looking to blame J. Mike for your own incompetence. Great.
With regards to the history of science and the foundation that Islam played in it. Yeah, Dr. Imran told you we don't use science. It was a straw man you brought. Why aren't we using science to prove God? Because you can't use science to prove.
He did not ask how you use science to prove God. He says if you use the scientific method for everything, if you value the scientific method, how come you don't apply it to the statements in the Quran? That was his question.
And then the
And you
follow-up
have not
question,
answered it.
yeah, and the follow-up question to that was, if you don't use it, what method do you use that's far better, that does get you to the metaphysical? And of course, none of those questions have been answered.
Nothing.
God. That's why we don't use it. Doesn't mean we don't use science.
This is not the point. I don't know. Can anybody really be this stupid? I mean, he was so clear in his questions. He was so clear in his methodology, in his initial approach, but he has been totally confused and totally taken off track by what Sabur is doing.
So that's been...
It's not.
That's
It's not a straw man to ask you. It's a straw man to tell you that's the position. I asked you. Imran clarified very, very nice. Which, by the way, I appreciate. You have been, and I agree. Like I'm interrupting, but that's because I'm getting 2 people that are interrupting me at every chance they get. The reason why I brought up vestigial structures and things like that was because
No, stop with the vestigial structure.
the reason why I brought those things up is because you're using a methodology, right? And you're saying that we came up with this methodology and that it's valuable to us. And so my question to you was simply, how do you use that in regards to your religion? Now you answered, and you answered honestly. You said we don't use that. That's fine. I can accept it. That's fine.
That's what I'm saying to you. But your question coming on.
But when the only reason I got into biology was to just to see if you had
look, just 1 second, please, Mike.
You too.
So you came on and you said, if you value science so much, why don't you use it in your religion?
No,
yeah?
That's not what he said.
That's assuming we've used science. We said we use science. That's a straw man.
Why do you care about science?
We don't. If you ask us, do you use this methodology to approve your religions? True. Yeah. We answer no. Then that's that. But you've assumed that we do. No, that's been clarified.
Why were you making value?
No, I just said nope. I said I agree. You told me, and I said that's fine.
Right, but then you went on to say,
Did I
what
not
do
just
you
say
use then? And then that's going into Islam, Quran, Muhammad Sallallahu. And do you accept that we're not doing that on the stream?
Sure, that's fine. But the reason why I brought that, so I don't know your guys' stream. I don't watch your guys' stream.
But it's called Deciphering Darwinian Delusion.
I didn't, dude. I didn't even look at the title. Someone asked me. Someone asked me to come in, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come in. And so I got in the stream. I said, link me.
Listen,
right? So I wanted to ask you guys questions, and you guys went through the rounds, and that's fine. But the reason why I brought up the vestigial structures and things like that was to see if you guys, if you are going to have an alternative hypothesis, if you're going to talk about Darwin, like we could talk about evolution all day, that's fine. But if you don't agree with it, I'm curious where your hypothesis.
Just stop it there for a second.
That's what he needs.
This is why it's a waste of time to talk about Darwinian evolution or any other form of evolution with any of these guys. You're not going to get anywhere anyway. Yeah. And they're not even going to accept that common descent is incompatible with their book, like I asked them. So what is the point of even talking about this? The point from their point of view is because atheists come along and, according to Hamza, and say, evolution is true, therefore your religion is false and science has proven it. And they want to reconcile the two, which they can't do and haven't done. And then they want to go down this the rabbit hole here. And as somebody in the chat said, roll in the mud. We haven't got any clarity here from them at all as to why they think the two are compatible and what methodology they do use to come to their beliefs, which was a secondary question that Mike asked.
And they've been going for over an hour.
Yep.
Mike, you just admitted now you don't even know what the stream's about, isn't it?
What?
You just admitted you don't know what the stream is about.
No, I said I didn't read the title of the stream. I didn't know you.
So do you know what the stream is about?
So when I do streams and stuff like that, we just talk about a topic, right? I didn't know you had a specific topic. That's fine, right?
All right, because we put a title on the stream called.
I'm in StreamYard. I don't see your title, dude. I'm in StreamYard. I'm not on YouTube. I was on YouTube on my phone.
Oh, okay. The title of the stream is Deciphering Darwinian Delusion. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is to demonstrate what Darwinian evolution is. And then we look at how we reconcile that as Muslims. Yeah? That's the stream. Now,
and this is what he's asked you, you Dumbo. This is, without knowing the title of the stream, he was actually spot on because he caught on what it is that you're talking about. And this is why he asked his two questions, which are both spot on. So, yeah, but you're right. He's never going to answer it.
It took it to that point for us, which is appreciated. But like I say to you, your next question, after you realize your original question was moot because the reality is we don't use that because you can't use that method. Yeah.
It wasn't moot. I asked you what the method was, and you guys don't want to tell me because you don't want to defend your faith.
No.
Stop it again. Just the point that occurred to me, right? If they're not going to accept the scientific method, or at least Hamza's not, and the other guys aren't piping up, then any argument they make that has any basis in science whatsoever is moot from their point of view.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So let me not hear Hamza talking about cosmology or fine-tuning of any of these scientific things in the future, which of course he will do. And then we'll go, well, hang on a moment. You said on the stream that science doesn't remotely prove your God. Why are you bringing up irrelevant points by your lights? What does prove your God? If all of the science doesn't do it, why are you bringing up these arguments?
Okay, here he has a cop-out because he can say we're not using science to prove God. We're using it to show that the Quran is correct.
Oh, well, show. Okay, well, that's fine then. Show that the Quran is correct. Isn't the Quran a result of your God? And if you can show that the Quran, if science contradicts your Quran, is God not false? And like
Then
he said,
yes, but it doesn't.
yeah, well, now we can go down that route.
Exactly.
But he's I think he's implicitly saying no, you can't do that, right? Because he's heard from these guys not to use science in the Quran,
Yeah,
so he doesn't
but
want to go down. His whole tactic.
These are not honest. These are not
Yeah,
honest
but his whole
people.
tactic, I think, stops is to avoid using science in its entirety, but then make arguments in favor of God, or a philosophical argument, which would be based on what we understand about the world. How do we understand the world? Through the scientific method. So even philosophy is based on science, and science on philosophy. So they kind of go hand in hand to whatever degree. But then you can't, there's virtually no argument you can make apart from something like personal testimony. That you can
No, but
avoid.
use it, but only when it's convenient.
Yeah, exactly.
Fine.
Mike, you came on saying, if you value science so much, why don't you use it to prove God?
That's not what he said.
That's effectively what you said.
Yes, and then I don't. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, but I really don't want to be offensive. by
Imran
it.
clarified our position.
Yeah. So Imran said that, and I go, oh, that's fair. That's fair. So what is the method that you use to get to God? That was my next question.
Right, but that's another method, isn't it?
But
That's
I'm not
going to
gonna
go into
answer
the
that.
Quran and the history of Islam and Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, and all of these things. So do you?
That's where you come
All
in.
those are the things I want to know.
Well, the stream's not for that.
You're like brushing off. That's fine. So when is that stream? Because that's the stream that I would love to talk about.
Listen to me. Message me on Hamza's Den, yeah, and I'll tell.
Okay, but he just said that they are talking about Darwinian delusion. And he asked them, okay, if we don't take, what was it, common descent or whatever, what is your hypothesis? What is your alternative? That was part of the stream. That was on topic. And now they're pretending, oh, look how happy Imran is looking. Oh, how nice. Now they're pretending that everything is hunky-dory, that J. Mike totally failed because he didn't understand the topic of the stream, and therefore he's going to get kicked now, and he can come on at some other stage, which is never going to happen.
You when it's on.
And by the way, that stage supposedly happened with hijab, which you might not have watched yet. And that was a train wreck for them. The only thing that was brought up that he went on, literally, I kid you not, for an hour, pretty much, was the argument from contingency. That was it. And that, by the way,
yes.
at best, if we granted the entire argument from contingency, it gets you to a first cause. You still got to demonstrate that first cause is a teleological mind of some sort and not something else. Then you've got to demonstrate that that mind is your particular flavor of God. You've got such a mountain. You're going up Mount Everest in flip-flops, as somebody else once said, which I thought was a good analogy. You're never going to reach the peak there. So even if we granted that one argument, so again, they haven't even remotely got into the Quran, and then they wouldn't probably let you or I on there to challenge on that. That's the weakest part, and that's the fundamental bedrock of their entire belief system, and that's the weakest thing they have.
That's fair. It's weird how you guys want to say it's I straw man and all this, but from the bat I was called a philosophical naturalist and.
No, from the bat, you brought in Francis Bacon red herring. From the bat, you brought in Francis Bacon red herring.
Listen,
From the bat.
No, that is not a red herring.
It wasn't a red herring,
If
no.
you're talking about the scientific method, you can't go without Francis Bacon. So that is not a red herring.
They were talking about induction, right? And he brought up Francis Bacon as the person who's recognized. And if you go to Wikipedia, that is what it says about him, right?
Yeah.
Now, somebody could argue the point about that, but it wasn't in any way a red herring, because
Exactly.
he was challenging whether Al-Haytham was the case, but then eventually said, hey, I'll grant you it doesn't matter. But I think Francis Bacon was. So, yeah, exactly. Complete red herring.
Francis Bacon.
look, I'm happy to admit that atheists can be methodological naturalists and don't have to accept philosophical naturalism. I was making a generalization that
charitable of you,
atheists are
eventually.
philosophical naturalists. That's still true. That is
Where's
still
your
true, and I
evidence
don't
for
think
that?
you can deny that any.
I mean, that's like
your
saying
evidence?
all atheists are Gnostic atheists. That's just not true. Some are
No,
agnostic
all
atheists.
Atheists are philosophical naturalists.
Where's your
This is
evidence
just
for
a
that,
fact.
please?
No, that's bullshit.
Making a
I'm
big
sorry,
claim.
what? Most?
That's absolute bullshit. I'm not.
Where does he get
not.
this from? And if he's going to talk about is philosophers, because how is he going to get a poll of most atheists? Where are you going to get that from? Where's your poll? Show me that that's the case, especially for
funny thing
atheists
is,
that know
yeah.
the difference between methodological and philosophical naturalism. If atheists don't know, then they might inadvertently, but if you explain both to them, I would suggest it would be unlikely, unless you're an Aaron Ra or somebody else, or some philosophers who are going to take that position. Right? So where's your evidence, right? This is where he makes this claim. Oh, and I don't think you can argue. Just show me the claim. Show me evidence for your claim. Don't tell me I must argue it. Show me evidence for your claim. He gets away with this all the time.
And the thing is, he called him out. Where do you get your 2% from? Well, show me where
Correct.
do you get your most from?
Yep.
Okay.
Did you pull them?
Okay, wait.
Exactly.
There you go.
Under the
No
premise
answer.
of the very beginning of the show when we spoke about new atheism,
I'm not going to answer that.
new atheists and the narrative that they have is very well documented. And if you go
No, it's
by
not.
that,
There is not even a definition of new atheists, you dumbo. Fuck, he's so stupid.
then we can understand that they are actually philosophical naturalists.
No.
No. Okay, yeah, I'm just getting angry.
You have it backwards. So like a lot of people think more so atheism was the position God does not exist. The new atheist movement is a distinction in agnostic atheism. So you're just
not
wrong. It's a
necessarily
distinction
true about
in
that.
methodological naturalism. So you're just wrong. It's absolutely that's just wrong.
Wait, I have like no idea what you're talking about here. I'm making a different point. You've just completely
You're generalizing the new atheist movement as being philosophical naturalist. That is not the case.
Okay. What is their main argument? What is the main argument that they use against God?
Gods
Science.
don't exist.
No. Main argument is that I'm not saying X is false. I'm saying I'm not convinced of X,
Okay.
right?
Let's go to the
that's
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm not even sure they're
understands it.
saying that. I mean, this is irrelevant. I
pretty
think
much-
both of them are. Just stop it there. I think both of them are reaching a bit for their own personal understanding of what it is. And we read the Stanford Encyclopedia on this, right? So I think this is just anecdotal from both of them at this moment in time. But that's not the main thrust of new atheism anyway. It's
Yeah,
the
but
four
no,
horsemen.
The point being made here is Sabur says atheists believe X. And what J. Mike is saying, no. The point of an atheist is not believing X. And this is the difference.
sums up the new atheist movement.
What is the main crux of the argument in the God delusion?
I don't care what Darwin.
He is so obsessed with this.
I know. As if this is the Bible for atheists or something, it's just it's
What would
it's
Hamza
sad,
call
really.
this? The one-trick pony. This is all that Sabur is.
This is
That's all
this
he
is
could
so
do.
sad, isn't it? That this is the best this guy's got, and his gullible audience will lap this up as if he said something substantial. They are so hypnotized, and to the rest of us, right? This guy is just uttering trivialities, red herrings, irrelevant points that people don't agree with, and then making as if this is the commonly understood or the argument for atheism. I mean, wake up, dude! You're in some other universe. Join us here whenever
With
you're ready.
Dawkins says. I don't even like Dawkins' writing, so I don't care.
That's fine. We're talking about new atheism, right? And he's the representative, not you.
No, he's not. He's
There
one of
is no
four
fucking
who had
representative
labeled
of
the four horsemen. Somebody else gave them this label. I mean, you don't even know this stuff. Stop.
He's not the He's not my boss. What are you talking about? He's not the representative for
I want to
atheists.
talk about new atheism. If you don't want to talk
This
about
is-
new
This is the problem.
let me
We're
tell-
not in a club together.
let me tell you what the position is. The position is
Oh, now he is telling J. Mike what his position is.
What he's really doing is saying, hey, here's my subjective opinion that I'm going to make it sound as if it's the authoritative way things are.
But you see, this is the problem. It's the same thing that I'm saying again and again. He looks at this from a theistic point of view. If he doesn't know something, he has to go to his elders, he has to go to his scholars, he has to go to the people who have the knowledge. He is not allowed to make his own decision. He cannot think for himself. These people have to tell him, you need to think like that. This is what you need to think, and this is what he does. He cannot imagine any other way of doing it. He cannot imagine that I am allowed to come up with my own ideas, which are different from those of Professor Dawkins. That I can accept some things, but not necessarily everything. That I can look up to him and take him as somebody that I value dearly, but I don't accept everything that he or Christopher Hitchens the same thing. The Hitch made a lot of mistakes. but I still value the way that he argued. But I don't need to accept everything the way that Subur needs to do it, because if he goes, he has to go in everything with both feet and everything in, and he has to follow. I don't have to do that. And this is what he doesn't understand. He cannot get his head around an individual thinking process. It always has to be the consens of everybody involved. And this is all he can do. It's the fundamental problem.
The success of science has rendered the God hypothesis null.
That's
their
true.
position. It's the
No, it's
central
not the position.
argument in Dawkins' book. And the
What is it?
No. That is not what he says. What Professor Dawkins says is that the Christian God is being obliterated by science because science gives you an alternative to lead a fulfilled life without having to rely on a God. That is his argument. He doesn't say that science has now obliterated all gods. No, he doesn't say that. I don't know. He cannot think like this.
What is in Dawkins' book? Is there not 7 different layers of like atheism in that, right?
Yeah.
So even if we were to use what you're saying against you, I don't think you've read the God Delusion.
we're talking about
Oh, lovely. Oh, yes. Can I make that a soundbite and put this on a button and listen to this 5 times in a row? I don't think you've even read this. And if you have, you haven't understood it. That's exactly the point.
the methodology. What is their main argument? And the argument is to use science against God. That is the main basis of the book.
That's also bullshit.
Yeah, I don't care about what the book says. I don't care. Captain Kirk said stuff too. I don't care what Captain Kirk said.
Hey, Mike,
I care-
Let's get the Mac right. Mike,
if we're going to talk about atheism,
What was Imran? Did he say hi to somebody or did he say, okay, fuck you, goodbye?
No, I think that
I'm going to
it's
talk
gonna
about
go.
Nietzsche by Richard Dawkins.
Why don't you just ask me what I believe?
I'm going to talk about these things. Now, if you have some weird niche type of atheism, that's fine, but that doesn't really apply to the vast majority of people out there.
How do you know that's
No,
the
so
case?
atheism is there's a proposition, right? God exists, God doesn't exist, right? Atheism is just not accepting that proposition to be true or outright denying that proposition to be true. That's all atheism is.
Oversimplistic.
Nothing else.
That's oversimplistic. I mean,
No,
Oh,
that's
when it
what it is.
suits
You
you,
guys
things are
presented the theory. So
oversimplistic.
That's
When it suits you,
exactly
things are
what it is.
oversimplistic, and now you want to go into nuance. When it's the shoes on the other foot, then you're fine with being oversimplistic. Again, you're just inconsistent.
This presented the problem, and because they've had an inability to prove their claim, we now have to label ourselves because you guys can't prove your claim.
You haven't.
Is there a term for non-golfers? Is there a term for non-dentists? No.
That's it. Oh, yes, this is so beautiful. This is exactly my point. I think words, terms like atheist and atheism should be abolished. We don't need them anymore. It's demeaning for me that I need to identify as something that I am not. And this is why we should do away with these things. That's exactly the point. We don't have a racism or a racist or things like that, because these are terms describing something that people are not. We don't need them in the sense of gods. It should be the standard null hypothesis that you go and you say there is no God. Like we have the position there today nowadays. Okay, there is no astrology. If you want to believe this stuff, okay, it's up to you, but you don't want to embarrass yourself. And this is the same thing that we should have with gods. Keep quiet about it. If you need a God, well, then go and do it, but do it quietly. That's exactly my point. So what J. Mike is saying shows me that I am not alone with this kind of approach. Thank you, mister. At least I am happy with what I've heard now.
No, we don't use that terminology. It's just because you guys haven't substantiated a claim that I have to now label myself.
J. Mike is trying to explain something. Do you think that Subur is going to stop yakking? I mean, all the time.
Yeah, he's not interested in understanding the position, right?
Yeah, but all the time that J. Mike is telling him something, he is talking. He will not stop talking.
Worldview, what you're saying right now, the Neville Chamberlain view of agnosticism, whatever it is, this.
All he has to do is bring in a name. He needs to name drop.
is not what he argues for. What he's basically
He just told you he doesn't care what other people say. It's about him. How many times does he need to tell you, don't give me names of other people or tell me all atheists or all, it's me. This is the point.
arguing for is that science has rendered God null. Okay? Now, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, oh, an atheist, they just have this very soft position. They're not theists, they're not atheists. They don't say there's no God. They don't say there is a God. They don't take a position. No, that's
It is not a position to say, I do not believe in the tooth fairy. That is not a position.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
is
you and I
just
disagree
not
on that
believing
one.
something.
I think you and I disagree a bit on that one. I think it is a position. Whatever you take, whatever your stance is a position. So you and I have talked about this many times. So I wouldn't agree
I
with that
still
one. But
disagree that I'm not collecting stamps. That's not a position.
yeah, but somebody
It's
says
just-
to you, why you're not collecting stamps, you've got reasons for it.
No,
That's the main thing.
I'm just not interested. I don't care.
Yeah, but
I'm
that's
just
still a
not-
reason,
But
right?
it's not a position to say I am not doing something. You know, it's not a position to not, you know, put your finger in your nose. That's not a position. It's just not doing something. So
Yeah, I mean, you could change it though and just say, I don't collect stamps. That's a position, right? Somebody says to you, why don't you collect
but
stamps?
I don't
Okay,
have a
I
finger
don't
up
like
my
it.
nose. Now what?
Why don't you have a finger up your nose?
Why should I have a finger up my nose?
Well, I don't need to have it up there, right? You've got a reason for it. So it's just the way you phrase it. But I think everybody has a position on something. The moment you say X, I X, you're taking a position. I don't believe this, or I don't
okay.
take a position
I
on
don't call
X.
it a position. Okay, so
You have a position because you're making a claim about something.
All right.
not actually the premise of the God delusion. The God delusion challenges
The
agnosticism.
God delusion isn't the Bible for the atheists, Sabor. What are you talking about? This is like
Yeah,
this is the worst
Just stop it
argument
there as
I have
well.
ever.
Stop it a moment. But the other point is, he suggested that other atheists criticized Dawkins' book anyway. So why is he bringing up Dawkins' book if his claim is that it's a shitty book that other atheists are like philosophers are critiquing, right? And presumably the answer is because, hey, all these atheists follow it. Well, how many atheists have you spoken to that follow accept the God Delusion as the most academically rigorous book? Please find me somebody who's actually read the book, that has taken some time to look at everything and thinks that that's the academic standard they should be using.
I like this. My position is that I'm not convinced of your position. Yeah, exactly.
Still a position though, isn't it? Anyway.
Well, and I maintain it's not. What is this? I just saw something from. Where is the scientific method? You may have heard of. No. I just saw it. My position. I'm not convinced of your position. Oh shit! It's already gone. What a pity.
14 years of being an atheist. The
When
worst argument.
when we're academically challenging atheism, I'm going to pick up academic books by the new atheist.
What?
I don't care about
Hang on,
a random.
Stop. Academic books by the new atheist, the same new atheist that you claim actual academics critique and say, I'm embarrassed to be an atheist. Doesn't he always bring up that Michael Roos says he's embarrassed to be an atheist and his critique is against Richard Dawkins' book? And now he's claiming suddenly that the book is an academic book? I mean, can he get his facts straight? Can he stop being a hypocrite? Can he be consistent across like 1 month? Is that even possible?
Oh yes.
Computational biologist who has appeared on a live stream. I'm going to look at what the academics are saying.
Sure,
Okay,
and
Imran,
that's
do you
called
have
that's
clarification
and
about
that is
that?
the definition of
Mike,
a straw man. That's the
Imran,
definition of a straw man. That's the definition of a straw man.
Mike, can I just say something very, very briefly, Mike? Look, Mike, I'm sure you're a great guy, and you're, it's really probably
look at
great
this
to have a conversation with
condescending
you
thing
one to one,
Yeah.
Yes.
face to face. But actually, sometimes on the internet, things can get a bit sort of misconstrued.
Yeah. Okay.
Before you go, I just want to ask you one question, if that's okay. And it's a very straightforward question. Can anything within science be anything, either the method or anything, conclusions that people have come to using any method, observing anything, coming with any theory, disprove the existence of?
Can it disprove it? I have no idea. It possibly can. Possibly it could not. But I don't have the knowledge of that. I'm about.
Absolutely not. Anybody who knows anything.
He asked me the question, Sabor.
We are both of us.
No, he didn't. He asked J Mike.
So I appreciate your honesty. You're not sure about
Yeah.
this.
So
stop there for a moment.
just so you guys know that.
He said, J Mike, one last question before you go. Again,
Yes.
Sabur's not listening, but that's par for the course.
Yes.
He asked J Mike the question, right? Can do it. And of course, J Mike said, well, I don't know. I mean, I take the position that science can, if God has interfered in this world, the interference it can in principle deal with. And his view that no, it can't. Well, demonstrate that. And I've given an example, and these guys went around the houses and they couldn't say very much about it, but demonstrate that it's impossible. If he's done something in this world, then in principle science can be brought to bear.
And I'm very sorry, but I have to totally agree with you.
Most positions for atheism,
What
it's
we're
not
gonna
like we
do
all have
is-
the same position. Like you guys have a claim Allah is
Look at Hamza's right arm. His finger is hovering over the button.
God, right? I am not convinced that's the case. But it might entail
Okay.
for some
I
people that
appreciate
they
that.
think that God doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, but
I
there's a
am
bottom
a
line.
I am a Gnostic atheist in some
Yeah.
regards. So to Islam and Christianity and certain religions, yes, those gods are
Perfect.
logically incoherent, and I don't believe in them because
Perfect.
of such, right? But other than that, it's like science is not part of that.
Exactly.
Of some, it's not part
That's
of
the
being
main
able to
point we
just.
were trying to make. That's really the point we were trying to make, Mike, in this dream, is that the science and the question of God are not actually intrinsic; they're not linked. Now, thank you for making that. You made it right at the end there. Now, we're going to answer your question, but this is a series of streams, and we're going to come to this evidence for the Muslim position for the evidence of the Creator. Hamza's going to message you to know when we're going to do that, and please come on then, and we'll have that conversation.
Yeah, message me
And hopefully
on
we'll put this
Hamza's
conversation.
Before he goes, I just want to make a small point here.
No, of
Sure.
course.
Now, when J. Mike was asked, is there something in science that can disprove the existence of God?
He needs
You said maybe,
to have the last
right?
word, and he needs to show, you see, I was right, and J. Mike is wrong. He has to have this.
Yeah.
He cannot let it go.
No.
I said
maybe.
I said I don't know. Maybe it could. Maybe there couldn't. Is what I said
Okay,
specifically.
that's fine. That's fine. And I'm saying that answer that you just gave right now, that shows you don't know anything about the philosophy of science or about science itself.
Yeah, just prove that. Just prove that.
Yes, this guy is stupid. My God, this guy.
Yeah, but he's a
is
dishonest charlatan as well, right? And he's one
Yes.
of these disingenuous ones, the sort of ones, and it's rare for me, but one of those sort of people that, at least figuratively, you do want to slap. I just want to bury somebody like this, right? Because they're so dishonest. I mean, some of the other guys are dishonest and disingenuous, but he's more of the slug, the slimy type of ones, right? That you
Yeah,
really
that's
want to
true.
bury.
Because it's not possible for anything in science conceptually.
How did you demonstrate that?
Yeah,
I will
listen,
demonstrate it now.
go. Let's see.
It's not possible. Yeah, just you had your time.
I
Let
just
me
said sweet is all I said.
Okay, so it's not possible for science to disprove the existence of God.
He just told you that. He just told you he doesn't know if
Shifting
it
of
can
the goalpost. You see the subtle shift there. The claim is that science can investigate. Can science be brought to bear a question of God's existence in the sense that God has done
Yes.
something in this world? And the answer, at least for me and for at least some other people, is yes. Now you shift the goalpost to say science can't disprove God. Well, it depends what you mean by disprove. And I'm going to ask
Exactly.
the question: did he interfere in this world? Can science be brought to bear on that?
Yeah, easy.
Conceptually, philosophically, it's impossible. Why?
It is not okay.
Well, let
Why?
him say. Let him
Because
answer.
science is based upon the assumption of methodological naturalism.
No, it is not. Fucking hell! Why can't he?
I think it is, though,
understand that?
Stops.
No,
Why do you think it's
in
not?
methodological naturalism, you do not exclude the supernatural right from the word go. If you can, you will go and put it and test for this supernatural if there is this claim. You don't say, well, it's supernatural, I'm not going to even consider it. You go and you test for it if you can. For example, the whole experiment with the prayer, we've been through this. This is exactly testing for the supernatural, and science does that. And that
Maybe-
is methodological naturalism.
Maybe another way to phrase it is that methodological naturalism assumes the natural, but doesn't rule
Correct.
out the supernatural. Maybe that's
Correct, that's it.
a better way to phrase it. Yeah,
But you can't say that it excludes it.
yeah, I agree.
And that assumption can never be.
You see, it's not an assumption that the supernatural does not exist. And this is where he's wrong. Because he is saying that science operates under the assumption that the supernatural does not exist. And that is false. And that's easy. That's very straightforward.
Proven, can never prove philosophical naturalism. And methodological naturalism
Methodological naturalism cannot prove anything that is philosophical, because that is the definition of philosophical. I don't know.
Depends what
Why
you mean
does
by
he
prove
think-
as well, right?
Sorry?
It depends what you mean by proof. Are you talking about a mathematical proof, a deductive proof, or something that people would call like a probabilistic proof, right? Depends what you mean by a proof.
Okay, all right, correct. I'm assuming, yeah, okay. But the thing is that methodological naturalism has not been designed. It's a tool, all right? It's not there to go and prove or disprove anything in psychology or in philosophy. Sorry, not psychology, in philosophy. That's not the goal of this thing. So if you have in philosophy this philosophical naturalism, how are you going to prove it? It's an assumption. It's a thought experiment. It's a way of looking at things is that you say, okay, our experience is that so far this is this and this is what we're going to look at. That's all. So you can't say, well, we need to prove this using natural philosophy, methodological naturalism. I don't know why he's so intent on showing that it cannot be possible to have the one if the other one can't prove it. I don't know what he's trying to do.
And confusing it with philosophical naturalism is the very basis, is the very main critique against new atheists by philosophers, because that's what they do. They confuse methodological naturalism with philosophical naturalism. So there's absolutely nothing in science that can disprove the existence of God. And if someone says, I don't know, one second, if someone says, I don't know if that's the case, then that clearly shows they have no idea about the philosophy.
No, because it
that's
depends
nonsense.
on your criterion for what a God is. It also depends on your falsification criterion, which
Exactly.
all you've done by saying this, Deborah, is you've just taken your God claim that could be falsified in some way and said, nah, it can't be falsified. It's a panacea. It's a remedy for all things. So it gets to exclude any type of rigorous testing that anything else would have to go through. For you just to deny that it could be outright, it's just... You have to demonstrate your God exists.
Mike,
right?
I want to ask you one last question. Can you weigh anything with a tape measure?
What a
Ever.
stupid question.
Yeah,
Can
you would
weigh
have to.
anything with a tape measure?
Yes.
Actually,
The
yes, you
idea
can.
is that, hey, science isn't the tool for it. And this is his analogy.
Yeah, but you see, this is how okay, I'm sorry to have to use this, but this is how dumb he is. Because yes, you can measure the weight of something using a tape measure. Because all you need to do is you just need to put it into water, and you can see from the displacement, you can calculate how heavy something is. So yes, you can. So your clever question is actually very dumb.
So if we had the object, it's not analogous because we actually know those two things exist. But how are we?
So can you
we
weigh
have
anything with a tape
proposition
measure?
of something that possibly
Oh,
exists?
okay.
Maybe.
Can you weigh
But
anything with a tape measure?
Yes, you can.
That's not an analogous question. It's entirely disanalogous.
No, can you weigh anything? It's the question. Can you weigh anything with a tape measure?
It's not this. It wouldn't be the right tool, right?
No, right. So science
Yeah,
is not the
no.
right tool. So science is not the right tool to prove God either. We've already established that.
I don't know. We had a. I was on the thread. I was on the stream when he asked me exactly this question. Does it disprove God? And I very carefully explained to him, no, you cannot generalize this. If you use evolution or any evolutionary biology, it does not disprove all gods. All it does is it disproves any God claimed regarding Adam and Eve, where you have the origin of species in one couple. That's where, yes, it does disprove it. So all the Abrahamic religions, all the Abrahamic gods are disproven using evolution, because you don't have this element of the common descent. And that's all. I explained it to him, I don't know how many times. And now, 2 weeks later, he has completely forgotten this. He has completely annihilated any knowledge of this and is saying the exact opposite, and is now saying this is what people believe. And I remember all three of us said the same thing, all three of us. And he has completely forgotten it.
Yes, but you haven't demonstrated that there's a God for that to be even the case, right? So we don't even have any, like, if you don't have any, if the methodology, methodology is not within science, then show what that methodology is,
you just,
so that we can
I'll be
get
honest
there.
with you, man. You were being, I can't believe you just said that.
Okay, wait, Hamza.
That you can't show the methodology that gets you to that to get you to that being.
1 second. Methodological naturalism.
We're not talking about science. We're talking about the method that you claim there's another method outside of science, right?
Right.
Yes, right. So if that's the case, and you demonstrate that God exists outside of that in some way, whatever that method is, so this is the problem. Like I'm using a tool to develop things, and you come along and you're like, well, there's actually another tool.
No.
You could
What
use
you're doing?
No.
You were
Listen,
asked.
1 second.
Here's what happened,
One
Mike.
second.
Here's what
Last thing I will say. Last thing I promise I will say. You basically are coming up to people who are using science. We are using a tool. We're hammering a house, and you come along and you go, hey, there's another tool that you could use. And when I ask you what the tool is, not only can you not show me what the tool is, you can't even tell me what it looks like. You can't even take me to Home Depot and show me what aisle.
So what we can do? No. That's
Can I take him to Home
we
Depot for a
just said it.
second?
We just said we're going to demonstrate it.
So J Mike, here's the
He's
thing.
so
What
right.
we were talking about is that science can't be used against the existence of God, which is fine.
That's
You
it.
can see that. Now, when you say what other things exist other than science, well, firstly, we have reason, and science is a subset of reason. We have testimony, which
Science is a subset of reason.
What he means is science is part of, is a subset in a sense of philosophy. It was like natural philosophy, and then it became the branch of science. So he's got his terms mixed up here.
science
But-
you need to actually.
But even still, what he's saying is kind of we've got philosophy and we've got testimonial evidence. Well, congratulations. That's not remotely going to get you to your particular God. We won't even accept that it gets you to a God. But even if we accept that it got you to a God, it won't even remotely get you to your God. So wonderful that you've got these tools that are completely ineffective for demonstrating your God.
Okay, but for me, it's the other way around. Okay, for me, science is based on reason. It's not the other way around.
Yes,
Because for
that's
me-
what I'm saying. Yeah. So you start with reason, and reason, philosophy is like reason being put into action, if you like, in a methodology. So yeah, you start with reason, and then science is based off that. Maybe I didn't
Okay,
phrase it
all right. Okay,
particularly well.
okay.
Sorry.
do science in the first place. We have logic and mathematics, which you need to presuppose. You need to presuppose that before you do science, we have to have
Again, no. Science uses mathematics as a descriptive tool. That's what
Yeah,
it
but you
is.
do need to
It's not that
presuppose
you
some
need
of
to
these things.
presuppose this.
Yeah, well, you can't prove it You can't prove it scientifically. So there are certain presuppositions based in science. But so what? So is everybody else.
Yeah.
But
in
these
physics.
tools
We
are.
have to have the assumption that there's a uniformity of nature, and that has to.
You don't have uniformity of nature. Just because we have something on this planet does not automatically mean that the same conditions have to apply on another planet.
It's not
It
so
could
much
be
another
different.
planet.
We could have different life forms based on different things.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, Stops. But I think that the point is that we presuppose that like atoms are going to work the same way. The laws of physics are going to continue to work the same as they did in the
Okay,
past. So
yes.
there's
Okay, yeah,
there
those
are
are the
these
laws of physics,
presuppositions,
yeah, of
which,
course.
but all of this is trivially true, right? This is not a problem. Everybody accepts this, even if they don't understand it at a deep level. Everybody presupposes things once they find out about them. But it's a trivial point. But these still will not get you to your God. So I mean, making all these trivial points, you're not remotely getting anywhere. You're like scratching at granite, but you're not even remotely making a dent into it.
Exist. And ultimately, we also have to believe in the moral worth of the good, in the moral worth of knowledge, in the moral worth of truth, in order to do
No,
science.
we don't even
So
have to do that.
science,
No,
for it
that's
to
nonsense.
function, it
Stop
has
there
to
a moment.
depend on.
We don't have to value it. If it were the case that I said, I do not care what is true, but it turned out that certain things were the case, whether I cared about it or not, it's still true. So I don't have to value it. Yes, I do, but I don't have to. Things will be true whether I value it or not. I guess what he means is that if you want to have a scientific inquiry, then you need to value truth. But somebody who doesn't value truth, I mean, if there is such a person, things will be true whether or not they accept it.
What is the moral value of H2O?
No, I think it's more a case of that you've got to value the pursuit of truth to do science. But again, he's not phrasing it particularly well here.
Yeah, but H2O doesn't change. I mean, it doesn't matter what your personal
Correct. That's why I say
preferences
you
are.
could not value it, but it would still be the case. But if you want to do scientific inquiry, then you
Is
would
that what
value
you're
it.
saying? Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
then I got it. Yeah.
many different routes of knowledge. Now, when it comes to existence of God, we use multiple ways to try and come to the existence.
Yeah, this is just sophistry,
You use
right?
only one thing, and that is faith. There is nothing else. There's only faith. There is not multiple.
Well, he's claiming testimonial evidence, and he's claiming some version of reason. That still doesn't get you to your God. And all we have to do is go to the Quran and Muhammad, and that's where you sink in quicksand. So you can make all these grandiose statements, use a bit of sophistry here. But when the rubber hits the road, when you try to invoke these things, it's an utter failure.
Of God, not just science. And everything that you've said so far.
What is that way? What is that way? That's what I've been
How can I
asking.
say, 1 second, Sabor.
Didn't you just hear me?
Mike,
Didn't you just hear me? We use
Just
reason.
listen.
We use testimony.
That's empirical.
Mike, listen.
Wait, hang on a
That's
second.
empirical.
Mike.
Whoa, just let me just say
Mike,
something in a second.
Wait, one second. Mike, don't
really bad.
you just think for a second, if I'm going to say it's empiricism, yeah, you're going to have to justify that. Now, is causality is that something we know empirically or something we know a priori?
What a priori?
Do you believe in a priori? Do you believe in
For the seventh time on this stream, I have said yes.
So if you said yes, then that means that's not empirical.
Yes, but that empirical. Do you think
Thank
in?
you.
Hold on. What do you think?
Mike.
Hold on. Oh no. What do you
He's
think
just
a
gonna
priori is?
steamroll,
More?
I don't know. Support is not capable of differentiating two different things. If he has one word, then anything and everything must fit into this.
Well,
He is not capable of understanding that there are different concepts which have different sort of assumptions and consequences. Everything can be different. It doesn't have to fit in with this, but he has only this one God, and everything has to fit in with this one God. He cannot think outside of this box.
I think the biggest thing, though, is that he's not capable or completely unwilling to have a charitable, intellectually honest conversation. That's the biggest thing you can say, right? The whole purpose here is propaganda for his sheep. Because anybody that thinks critically is not going to accept what he says, but the sheep, and we hear from them regularly, they will cheer from the sidelines, even though they have virtually no clue what's being said. But the fact that he uses a few drop-in words here makes the other guy sound as if he doesn't know what he's talking about. The sheep go, "Wow, this guy's amazing." And the proof is when you ask these sheep, what is it that he said that's substantial? You hear complete silence or complete gibberish. At no point do you hear anything substantial because there isn't anything. So they haven't got anything unless they make something up or actually go and read something that he hasn't said. Then they might bring something. You go, hang on a moment, but he didn't say that. So either, that's why we know that this is preaching to the sheep, because none of us accept any of this gibberish and stuff. And we can see the tactics that's being used here, and it doesn't work for any of us. So there's only one people that will work for, and we know who that is.
But the thing is that listening to this now, I realize that I have still overestimated this Sabur Ahmad Darwinian Delusions guy. I've realized now that he's actually much more stupid than I actually thought, because I always gave him a little bit of credit that he is able to do certain things, in his brain. I realized today, as soon as you break him down, all this is gone. There's nothing left there. As soon as you try and nail him and say, okay, well then you just said this, now explain this. He can't. This is just a bag of tricks. That's all it is. And I'm actually surprised that as soon as somebody comes there and really takes him to task, he's completely, totally lost. He really has no clue what he's doing anymore. And this is what I'm looking at, and I'm saying, wow, why did I even think he was able to, piece together like a coherent argument? He can't. Okay, so I think now he's got.
What do you think a priori? No, listen. What do you think a priori is?
1 second, Mike. 1 second, Mike. Just listen, Mike, please. Right. A week on Monday.
You don't understand what a priori is.
Mike, just a second.
Yeah. So I'm doing a PhD in philosophy.
Suppose, just 1 second.
Excuse me.
Who's now touting what they do? When he said he was a computational biologist, you shat all over that he'd said this. Don't worry about that. We all got it. But now who's touting their credentials?
Did he say he's doing a PhD in philosophy?
Yeah, I know it's surprising to me as it is to you.
Do you get them on the back of packets of cornflakes now, or what?
Yeah, I'd love to know where he's doing it and what the dissertation is, and get people, either us or anybody that's knowledgeable in philosophy, to go and read whatever he's supposed to be studying and see whether, who the professors are, what the institution is, and in fact, what does he actually know?
Come on, okay.
Yeah, let's move on, Stops. Otherwise, you'll bang your head.
Just 1 second, Sabor.
Thank you, our computational biology major.
Sabor, 1 second. Okay, listen, Mike. A week on Monday, I'm doing a stream here, mashallah, with Mohammed Hijab, alhamdulillah, and Dr. Imran, and possibly Sabor if he's available. Yeah. And that stream is about the existence of a creator, about the kalam, the contingency.
Stop. Hang on a moment. The kalam, the contingency. All you've got is philosophy at best. That's the only thing you've got. And because there's still dispute and there isn't a knockdown argument, that's your last refuge. But you can't appeal to science. So don't give us any science there, because remember, you said science can't prove it, number one. And number two, a God. Who cares about a God? Can you demonstrate that Allah is the God of the world? And if you can do that, you don't need to go to a God. You don't need to worry about all these other arguments. Just show us that the Quran and Muhammad is true. That's all you do. Then everything, because if that's true, you don't need anything else. Why don't you just go straight there? That's supposed to be your strongest argument. You can bypass all the rest of this. Why do we never even get there? Even if we grant you that a God is possible or probable, I'm going to do that next time. Now demonstrate that it's your one, because I want to get down to the real nuts and bolts where your foundation is, and that's where we can expose it. That's the worst part you've got.
But contingency, I don't understand. Contingency, I mean, even I was able to show that this is stupid, that this is silly, that this is a non sequitur, and
I mean, it does get complicated depending on how you go with it. Hijab's version, of course, is very surface level, and I had a quick look into it.
But still,
there's more to it than that. But even still, it's not a convincing argument for most philosophers. But even still, even if we granted it, that's got you. All that's got you is that there must be a something that is independent. So what? You still got all your work ahead.
Is that this Leibniz thing?
Yeah. That's one version of it. Yeah.
But that's been okay. Yeah. Contingency, eternal universe, multiverse, all of this kind of stuff. We're dealing with evolution in this stream. But that side of things, why we believe in a creator, how we believe in a creator, what methods we use to believe in a creator, will be done on that stream. See, this, we don't just come in here and randomly talk.
That's fine, but
right, so all I'm going to say, Mike,
just use empirical data and then try to claim
Mike, you can watch that stream, you can come on that stream, and you can bring these points, and you'll see in that stream how we come to the conclusion. Yeah, and then you can challenge that.
That's fine, right? And I'll challenge Sabor's understanding of a priori knowledge.
Done, but I'm not going to do it now. So I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks for joining us, Mike. Message me on Hamza's Den. And inshallah, I'll let you know. I think it's a week Monday, inshallah, 7 p.m.
Hopefully you guys can show me the tool.
This will be more in line with what we're doing here. Also, watch the rest of the stream. You might get some of your answers as well. All right. Thanks for joining us, Mike. Much appreciated.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Dude.
All right. Let's stop there.
Oh, 142. Let me make a note of this so that I remember next time. My goodness.
Yeah, it descended a bit at the end there. That was a bit painful at the end. All right, it's 12 o'clock on the dot my side, and a different time wherever you are. So let's bring it to a close there. We can always, I think we can always do a summary, but I think we've said it multiple times now, so I don't think we need to go into it too much now. Hopefully, everybody got value from this in some way. Either you were entertained, you were educated, or not. And we'll obviously get on with part 3 whenever Stops and I have got time. We apologize. We can't tell you ahead of time and schedule it ahead of time. Stops and I are busy at different times, and we do this in the spare time when we have, in the evening. So as always, I want to thank my, as always, co-host, Stop Spamming. I want to thank everybody who viewed. Stops, any last word for you?
Yeah, no, I can't get over this, what he said in the end, that he's doing a PhD. A PhD. Okay, for me, this is okay, maybe I'm naive, but for me, this is some sort of an intellectual standard. And
but the fact that you're doing one and you've qualified it are two different things, number one, but then also where are you doing it and what sort of qualification are you getting for it? So I think there's a lot more to it. I mean, it does sound academic, etc. But I think, we got to take it not so much the claim, but the pinch of salt of how strong it particularly is, and what is he actually going to bring to bear, even if he gets it. So, but let's not, I don't think we should hover on that too much. It's a claim. Who cares?
This is a total shock. I'm shell-shocked at the moment at the prospect that somebody like Subur can run around and say, I've got a PhD in whatever. This for me is, this guy is the height of stupidity, and then he can claim he's got a PhD. Come up. Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Alrighty.
J. Mike was on the wrong stream. He was on the wrong thing. He didn't understand anything. He didn't know anything. And then he was just showing off that he was studying evolution. All right. Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to everybody.
These things. It just takes a hell of a lot of time. My goodness, 2.5 hours just to get 1.5 hours of video done. Whoa.
And we didn't even do that. This was the second part, right? So it was not even that.
The last one was also like 4.5 hours just to get 1.5 hours of stream. My goodness.
Yeah, so much to say in these things.
Okay, guys, good night. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for sticking with us. Thank you very much for the comments. I didn't spend so much time looking at the comments today because I was fascinated what was going on the screen. So see you whenever, hopefully soon, where we'll do part 3 of this.
Thanks very much. And again, we'll be on tomorrow, every Friday, 8 p.m. UK time on the Gin and Tonic Show. So hopefully we'll see and hear from some of you then. Until next time, thank you and good night.
Good night.